Tonight, the writers of Lobo want to tell a Red Lantern story, conveniently forgetting all the stuff that happened in the Red Lantern book that came before it. Cyborg has an alien invasion happen and just decides to skip over the part where the aliens actually invade. And there is a name that strikes fear into the hearts of men, a name that should never be spoken, and that name is Telos. All that and more tonight on the Not-So-New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 214 of the Not-So-New 52. I am your host and hold on to your seats because it's Telos time. I know, it's not quite as catchy as Morbin time, but honest to God, I think that the story of Telos and this book as a whole is going to be practically identical to the Morbius movie. Like, who thought this was a good idea? Come on, really? Like, I have to assume it's contractual obligations. I talk about that more in the issue itself, but like, clearly, we've already been 5 months out from Convergence at this point. Clearly, it didn't work out very well. Like, nobody is saying that broke the bank and everyone's like, oh yeah, everyone loved Convergence, it was fantastic. So why would you think you could go back to that well? Why would you think that Telos is going to be the breakout character of like, oh, you know, Convergence didn't do very well, but everyone was really kind of keen on that Telos character? No. What are you doing? Anyway, that's actually not the only important thing coming out this week. The other thing we got coming out, which I'll mention when I get all the comics listed in a minute here, but we also have a new weekly. For anyone who was unaware, there was Batman Eternal, that like, I don't know, 2 years ago now. And now we have Batman and Robin Eternal, which is half the length. It's only going to be 6 months, 26 issues. But yeah, it is a new weekly that we will be covering, and that is just starting this week. But let me tell you all the comics that are coming out this week, because honestly, it's a weird one. So we have, in no particular order save for alphabetical, Action Comics, Batman and Robin Eternal, Batman Beyond, Cyborg, Detective Comics, Green Arrow, Green Lantern, Lobo, Midnighter, Omega Man, and our boy Telos. Now, I've already mentioned the two new number ones. However, there is a weirdness going on this week with Green Arrow. And that is, we have Green Arrow issue number 45. And we also have Green Arrow annual number 1. Both of these are coming out the same week. And it'd be one thing if, like, the annual were not in the main plot. If it were something that were just its own little separate one shot, read this, you don't need any other context. However, the annual is actually part 1 of the next arc after we finish up the current arc. Mind you, issue 45 does not wrap up the current arc. We still have multiple issues to go, at least 2. So I don't know what this annual's doing here. It's weird, it's out of place, and I guess it's just something you got to keep in the back of your mind for the next 3 months until we get part 2. So just know that that's happening. I'll try to remember it as I talk about the comic itself, but yeah, that's all stuff coming out this week. It's going to be a long one. I know, I already filmed it all, so let's go ahead and jump in on, I mean, it's got to be Telos, right? Let's start her off there. Telos number 1, written by Jeff King, art by Carlo Pagulayan. So Convergence happened. Telos was the primary, secondary, whatever antagonist of Convergence. And it ended with him and Brainiac. And Brainiac said, hey, Telos, you were once a man, and then I turned you into this, and you can keep your powers, and I'm going to tell you where your family is, and we're chill. And Telos is like, all right, bet. And then they go off and do their thing. This issue picks up with Telos just chanting internally this Greek epic poem. I think it's like the Iliad or whatever. And he's just shouting and yelling for Brainiac, saying how he lost his family and all this stuff. And he comes across Brainiac's ship and he's like, come out, man, I'm going to fight you. And he's like, are you chanting Greek? How do you even know Greek? And he's like, I don't know, Convergence, don't ask questions. Anyway, get out here, I'm going to kick your ass. And Brainiac is still recovering from Convergence. Like, he had a whole thing happen to him. And he's like, well, I'm weak and you're coming at, like, my shields are down. I don't want to fight you, man. I thought we were chill. And he's like, I will murder you. And so he starts blasting his way inside. as he gets in, there's a whole bunch of like drone bots and stuff like that start coming in, start attacking him. They swarm around Telos, and he just blasts out energy or whatever, saying like, oh, I would like you to continue your testing as you always do to see just how mighty I've become. And as he's going through, he's beating up all the drones and robots and whatnot. He finally gets deeper into the ship. And there's a moment of pause where Brainiac pops up on a bunch of screens. It's like, bro, what is your deal, man? I thought we were chill at the end. Why are you doing this? And he's like, where's my family? And he's like, I sent you to find them. I told you where they were at. And he's like, yeah, well, you lied and you stole my life and I want the truth and give me my family back. And then Brainiac's like, look, as long as you keep on attacking me, there's going to keep on being a bunch of drones. Like, they're automatic. I can't control that. So can we please just talk about this? He's like, no. And he uses his powers of matter manipulation / control, which is frankly super OP, to just blow them up with a wave of his hand. And at that point, actual Brainiac shows up. He's wearing like armor and stuff like that. And he's like, if you kill me, you will never see your family again. And Telos like, what'd you say? You want to square up? And they start fighting each other. And Brainiac's like, look, when I left, I put them on a safe planet for you to find, and I gave you that location. And he's like, well, I went to that location and there was nothing there. It was just emptiness for millions of miles. And I swear to God, if you lost my family, then you're better off dead than alive. So we see there's explosions on Brainiac ships, but we cut down to Colu, which is the home planet of Brainiac long while back. And we see all the people are being ruled by a person, creature thing named Computo. And he's like, hello, bring forward the rebels for judgment. And it's a big, like, Coliseum arena looking thing. Everyone's hailing Computo. We see a little servant guy comes up and says, hey, we picked up a transmission between Brainiac and the rebel leader. And they download whatever data that was. And then we see Computer just absolutely destroy all of these rebels in like a public execution. And he's like, cool, great. And he turns to Validus, who is a Legion of Superheroes villain, like from the future. I don't know what he's doing here, but whatever, he's here and he's working for Computo. Also, just have to point this out. In the trade version of this, the one I'm reading from, sometimes they show like early concept art or whatever at the end of the book, or at the very least at the end of the issue. This one just shoves it right into the middle of the story. It's just here. Anyway, we then see Telos has the upper hand on Brainiac, and he's like, ha! I'm more powerful than you are now because you were weakened after convergence, and also I took away your armor, so I'm gonna kill you. And he's like, whoa, hold up, look, just hear me out. Maybe we can work together on something here. And he's like, all right, I'm listening. What do you got? And he's like, all right, look, after convergence, I got a little bit woozy. I was a little bit weird. I lost some memories from early timelines. And so when I said, hey, here's your family, I may have been a bit drunk at the time. So I may have messed that up a little bit, fair enough. And when you went to the location, you didn't find anything there because my memory was faulty. However, we can figure out where it is supposed to be. We can get all that working. And Telos is like, oh, you were just wanting me to be your servant again. You never planned on setting me free. I'm going to kill you. And he's like, no, look, I just want to go back to my planet. I want to go back to Colu, and we can undo all this. He's like, what, you want to do more time stuff? He's like, no, we're not messing with time stuff. I'm just trying to change the present of what's going on. So here's the deal. When I was big, scary kaiju Brainiac, I set up an automatic backup to all of my systems that would not have been erased after I started erasing timelines. That backup is down on the planet Colu, which is currently being ruled by a AI that I put in place called Computo. But Computo, after being away for so long, got a little bit too big for his britches, and now he is extremely powerful. And Telos is like, well, I'm stronger than you, so I'm stronger than Computo. So what's the problem here? He's like, no, you might not be. I mean, I know you can control matter, but for some reason we're going to pretend like you can't, and you need to go down, and you need to be stealthy about it for whatever reason. He's like, okay, fine, we'll be allies. What do you want me to do? He's like, cool, there's a resistance movement down on the planet. It's led by this other Coluan named Techni. she's a female brainiac looking thing. It's like, yeah, she was one of the few who managed to break free of Computo's grip, and I've been talking with her and trying to deal with it. She's the only one who is going to be able to help you hack into Computo's systems. And Telos is like, okay, but like, if I've got her as a contact and all that, like, why do I need you? Why do you need to be kept alive? And he's like, because I'm the only one who can actually break the encryption on, like, my backup, but like she can get you to the backup. And he's like, all right, but what you're saying is that I need to go down onto a planet where most of the people are hostile and get back out. And he's like, yes, there's a 37% chance you'll die. However, if you give your power back to me, then we don't have to worry about any of this. I could just do whatever up here, and like, we don't even have to step foot down on Kolu. I'll just take care of it all up here. And he's like, nah, I don't trust that. I don't trust that at all. So yeah, I'm gonna go take care of that. And he literally just says, I just want my family back. So he teleports out and he goes down into the planet. And we see Brainiac is talking to somebody. It seems like Computo, but Computo's all orangey and this one is purple. And he says, I am delivering Telos as promised. Remember our deal. So Brainiac is evil. Who would have thought? It's such a weird book. I don't like, it's one thing if you want to have a Telos book because you're like, oh, look, we set up this whole thing of like, he doesn't know his name and like he has to go find his family or whatnot. But I feel like, and it's weird because it's written by Jeff King, who wrote Convergence, but I feel like they forgot they ended on such a good note until they already came up with like the idea for the book. They're like, we want to do a heist book and we've got all this planned out and it's going to be him like getting vengeance against Brainiac. And then one of the editors is like, but weren't him and Brainiac cool? And they're like, ah, crap, we already wrote 6 issues. So yeah, it's just a weird setup for a book. And then the fact that it's Telos is hilarious because who cares about Telos? Yeah, no, I really don't have anything. Art's okay. The if you ignore the fact that they're just making up retcons to try to justify the story, I don't hate the setting of it either. The idea that you've got this complete prick who just wants to go down to the planet to get his family back. Fine, whatever. This just feels like it's going to be a weird one. All 6 issues of this feel like they are existing on this bubble of DC didn't want to put it out, but has to. Like, I could be wrong. Maybe this is something they were like, yeah, we could really make Telos work, but I have to assume this was like a contractual thing because Convergence did not do numbers. It's not like it was something that were like, yes, we want more of Convergence, please. So yeah, I'm interested to see where it goes, but damn, this one is like a 6.5, if not lower. I'll give it the benefit of the doubt and say 6.5, but I don't see it getting much higher as we continue. Batman and Robin Eternal #1, written by Tynion and Snyder, art by Tony S. Daniels. So this is a new weekly series that I believe was to mark the anniversary of Robin's first appearance, and we're just doing this for 6 months. So there is issue 1, which I will be covering. However, apparently, in reading this trade, I discovered there was an 8-page sneak peek in a Batman Endgame special edition issue. I'll just cover it real quick because it's basically nothing. We open up several years ago. Batman comes into the Batcave looking all haggard, all beaten up or whatnot. He accesses a shadow file and plays a recording, which is basically some woman with white hair who's all pixelated out, we can't see what she looks like, says, oh, what would Robin think if he found out how much he didn't have a choice in becoming Robin? How much you set everything into motion, Bruce? Everything would fall apart because of that. And then we cut over to now, which is going to be, I guess, several issues into this book, where Dick Grayson is on a snowmobile heading to some giant ice fortress. And he's getting calls saying, like, Paris is falling, we've lost Tokyo, everything around the world is going horrible. And Dick's like, oh, everyone keep fighting, we can't let her win. And we see all the different Robins, including Red Hood, Damian, Tim, and Dick, along with Harper Row, the We Are Robins kids, along with Jim Gordon Batman, and Stephanie Brown Spoiler, are all doing fights against a bunch of kids who are just attacking them everywhere. And Dick says, oh, Bruce, how could you let this happen? And then we cut back to Batman in the cave, who puts in a USB drive and says, extract the file, then purge all the traces. And then Dick Grayson, as Robin, shows up, because this was many years ago, and he says, hey, Batman, I noticed you were having some trouble while we were on the Scarecrow case, but, like, you can talk to me if you want. We're partners. Batman and Robin forever, right? And Batman just takes the flash drive and, like, pockets it, just being like, I promise you, this is something you'll never need to worry about. So then we get into the issue proper. So we open in Cairo, Egypt, several years ago. We get this young Egyptian boy who has the exact same thing as Bruce Wayne happened. His parents exit a theater. They go down an alley. Bang, bang. His parents are dead. So then we cut over to Gotham City, and this is during that Scarecrow case time where Dick's talking about, like, oh, yeah, it was great. We were jumping around. We were doing all this stuff. There was this big thrill or whatever. And we intercut with now, where Dick Grayson is talking to his Spiral agent lead named Poppy, just kind of the partner going on. Turns out he's on some sort of a case, and there's some sort of timetable that it looks like he's going to miss because he's chasing this random dude with some technology that allows him to ride motorcycles up the side of a building. And Dick's like, oh yeah, this is great, secret agent stuff, super spy. So he goes in, and the handler's just like, well, you're going to miss your window. You got to hurry this up. And he's like, don't worry, I called for backup. In comes Red Hood firing guns at this guy, but not actually at him because Dick says no killing. And he's like, yeah, don't worry about it. I'm just shooting a path along the side of this skyscraper to guide him into a specific position where he crashes into some lettering at the top of the building. And now he's off his bike. So he's got a gun. He's got it aimed at the next Robin, Tim Drake, who shows up. And he's like, yeah, you've got all this technology stuff. Click, click. I disabled it. It's no longer a thing. You can't shoot me. And he's like, yeah, well, I got an old-fashioned gun, and I'm just going to shoot you with that. And he's like, yeah, I still wouldn't do that. Because standing behind him is Jason and Dick. And they both punch him out. And Tim's like, I could have just fried his brain, right? We didn't have to punch. Like, it's so uncivilized. And he's like, yeah, sure, whatever. So then Dick looks out over Gotham. He's like, it's weird. Over in my book, they told me I had to leave Gotham. And now I'm back here again. It's almost like the writers kind of mixed up a little bit on the release dates. Oh, well. But now he's back in Gotham doing whatever Spiral stuff. And they mentioned something offhandedly about... I believe it was a dirty bomb that this guy was going to do, and he questions, like, this is a little bit under Spiral's, like, thing. What are we doing here? But either way, he says, all right, hey, Tim, I got to borrow a grappling gun so I can get out of here. And they briefly talk about how Bruce is, like, an amnesiac and all this other stuff going on. And they're like, yeah, things are weird right now, but we're all still together and family, whatever. So he goes off. We then see Jim Gordon, Batman, is talking to his handlers and saying, like, hey, we've got millions of dollars in this Batman thing going on here. We're being fooled by a young girl who's basically just strapping internet routers to car batteries, and she's managing to get one over on us. And they're like, yeah, well, she's a super smart teenage girl, I guess. But then Jim's like, but you forget, I not only was a police commissioner, I was also a father of a teenage daughter. And if there's one thing I know, it's that teenage girls love to stick around to see their old man being made fun of. So he just lifts up a dumpster, and Harper Row is there in full Bluebird outfit saying, like, crap. So Gordon basically says, look, you're under arrest. We're going to confiscate all your vigilante stuff, and you're not going to do this anymore because, like, it's dangerous and you're a kid. Like, what are you doing? And she's like, oh, well, I was supposed to train under Batman, but then Batman died or whatever, and now I can't get my training. So that's not cool. And she's like, okay, sorry, but that's not my problem. And she's like, well, maybe this is. And she whistles, and it turns out that she has a little drone bot flying around Jim that locks up his suit so he's unable to move. And she's like, yep, I'm that smart that I'm able to, even if it's not EMP resistant or whatever, I can hack into whatever part of your suit and make it so you can't move. And trust me, I ain't gonna stop. So she runs off and leaves Jim frozen. We then see that Dick, his spy thing that he had to get to was there is an opening at a tower of some college or whatever. He's posing as a professor, and this is where that dirty bomb thing is supposed to be. So he's looking out, trying to figure out whatever. Poppy's in the car being like, yeah, hey, this is your hometown. Isn't it weird that you were turned into a child soldier by a psychopath wearing leather? And he's like, yeah, that's phrasing it weird, but yes, I guess. But, like, it's my history. It's cool. We're all good with it. So At that point, he looks around. He sees that there's this big art piece on the wall, and he, as talking to Poppy, reminds him of one of his earliest cases with Batman, which was Scarecrow. It was one of his first encounters with him. In fact, their first encounter, and he was trying to figure out who this guy was. Dr. Crane was helping them track all the breakouts of fear around the city, and it took them a while to realize, oh, wait, it's him. Whoops. So at that point, all of his adjunct professors and all of his co-workers and whatnot were all dressed up in Scarecrow gear, and so Robin and Batman had to beat through them. Eventually, they made their way out of the country. It's a whole thing. But we see that as they made their way around the world, Dick is looking at this picture. He turns around, and there's a bunch of kids that are all standing behind him. He's like, oh, sorry, you want to see the painting? And they're like, no, Dick, you're right. It did all start here. This is where it all began. That's why we brought you here, to kill you. And Dick's like, hey, Poppy, I got some kids here who can see through my hypnos implant, and also they say they want to kill me. What's up with that? But Poppy's not responding. The kids pull out guns, and they're like, oh, Batman's not coming to save the day. He never trusted you. You know that? He threw you away, and he got the newer model, and he paid top dollar for it. And so as they pull guns on Dick, he does some acrobatics, jumps around them. And we see the kids are like, oh, hey, we're not going to kill you, Dick. Orphan is coming. He'll do it. And we see this big metal boots come into the room saying like, oh, Mother is not cruel. She's just tidying up mistakes. And that's what you were, Dick, a mistake. And Dick's like, all right, I'm out. And he just crashes through a stained glass window, runs over to Poppy in the van. And just like, Poppy, I couldn't get you. They were blocking the calls or whatever. What's up? There's this thing going on. She pulls a gun on him and says, I'm sorry, Dick. There's no other option. Mother says hello. And she tries to shoot him, just nicks his shoulder. He manages to steal a motorcycle and start driving off. And is like, what the hell is going on? So we see Orphan is told that Dick has escaped. And Poppy's like, oh, I think we can do this, that, and the other thing. And Orphan's like, excuse me. You did not send the orders here. Remember who you work for. And she's like, right, sorry, totally. Go ahead, Orphan. So we see Dick starts making his way back into the city, and he's just like, all right, can I get anybody from the Bat family on the radio? Like, something crazy's going on. But as he's trying to make his way back, he gets jumped by this young woman who they don't give a name to, but it's Cassandra Cain. It's Cassandra Cain, former Batgirl in a previous continuity, and she just starts kicking Dick Grayson's ass. And he's like, oh, you don't want to fight with me. I know all these special... And then he just gets his ass handed to him. He's like, oh my God, where did you learn to fight like that? But as she's got him pinned, she says, Mother, and then passes over a USB flash drive with a Bat logo on it and just passes it over to Dick. And Dick's like, wait a minute, Batman used to use these. Where did you get this? But as he looks up, she's Batmaned out. She's no longer there. So we then cut over to Harper Row getting back to her apartment. Currently in continuity, spoiler, Stephanie Brown is living with them being Harper Row and her brother. And she was so upset that Harper went out without bringing her. Stephanie's now going out on the town of spoiler, and Harper's like, all right, whatever, I'll deal with that at some other point. So the brother says like, hey, maybe you should give this all up because Batman's not going to train you. And she's like, nah, screw that. So she goes into her room, and waiting in her room is Orphan. And Orphan says, hey, you are the key to everything that they cannot know, and that is why you must die. And we cut over back to the Batcave, which has been all wrapped up. He voice activates to get the computer running, shoves in the flash drive, and says, all right, what is this thing? And it's got a list of just names upon names upon names. But on that list is Dick Grayson, Jason Todd, Timothy Drake, Harper Row, Cassandra Cain. And he's reading them off just like, what is this? And then as he says Cassandra Cain, it playbacks a hologram of Batman saying, look, I'm not the man you thought I was. I messed up a lot. Right now, we're doing this thing with Scarecrow. Like, we just wrapped that up. We just spent this entire thing as I'm recording it. There's a girl named Cassandra Cain that I told her to give you this file if I fell tonight, if I did not succeed in what I'm doing. If you're seeing this, it means that I can't stop her from showing you this. And what you need to understand is Mother is crazy strong. Like, she has so much power. Do not underestimate her. Do not try to understand her. She is so much above both of us here. And this is my greatest sin. Mother is my deepest regret. Please try to forgive me. And then it goes dead. And Dick's like, what did you do, Bruce? What's happening? And then we cut back over to Cairo. Says several years ago with that boy in the alley with his parents. And We see if whoever fired off the shot says, "It's me, it's done." A voice says, "Is the child ready for acquisition?" And we see Batman standing there with a gun, freshly shot, saying, "Yes, mother, everything went according to plan." Batman's working for the villain and he fired a gun. What the hell? Yeah, of course that's probably not the case. But I don't actually know what the case is. I never read this story. I don't know what it... I mean, I know some stuff of what it amounts to just because I know where like Cassandra Cain ends up by the end of it. But yeah, no, I'm actually very interested in this. I think it's got a good setup for the story overall. Art-wise, it looks great. I know we're going to have rotating artists. Obviously, it's a weekly book. That's going to happen. But Tony S. Daniel sets the stage very well. So yeah, I'm into it, and I'm looking forward to seeing exactly how this is all going to pan out and what it's going to mean for Cassandra Cain. Harper Row seems to be a center point in this, which obviously she was just introduced at the beginning of the New 52 and hasn't really had anything to do. So if she's the center of this story, I'm interested. So yeah, I'll give this one a... honestly, I'll give it an 8. It's got a lot of intrigue. I'm very much into it. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens. Detective Comics number 45, written by Peter Tomasi, art by Marcio Takara. So, kind of, yeah, I mean, new writer entirely. Peter Tomasi's taken over on a new thing here. We start off with the new arc of, in India, there is a cricket game going on. We're in a box seat where a bunch of rich people are like, yeah, go for it. And then all of a sudden there's a bunch of water at their feet. And they're like, what the hell is this? And the water starts swarming up their bodies, envelops their heads, starts drowning them, pulls out their eyes, and then the water starts to recede, carrying their eyes along with, and just leaving them all dead on the ground. No time for that, though, because we cut back over to Gotham, where Bruce Wayne is looking through some old photo albums, seeing stuff about his parents, and he's talking to Alfred, and Alfred's like, is that, like, ringing any bells? You remember anything? He's like, well, I mean, it's good to see my parents, like... I don't remember anything about them. Like, what were they like? And he's like, oh, well, they were super awesome people. I can tell you all about your parents. But then all of a sudden there's a knock at the door. And he's like, let me go get that first. And standing at the door is the entirety of the Justice League. Superman, Shazam, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Flash, Cyborg. And it's just like, hey, we need to talk to Bruce. And he's like, excuse me. I told Superman pretty recently, no. He's not Batman, and he's not going to be Batman again. So let's not do with that. And just like, well, look, we got something going on here. It's a decently sized threat, and we need a detective. And we're thinking, like, even if he's not Batman, maybe he still has detective skills, and we can just, like, pull him in as a consultant, then, like, try to solve this a little bit. And he's like, no. We're not doing that. We're like, you have to understand, like, Bruce should not be a part of that. And then Bruce steps in and he's like, well, what's going on, guys? And we see Wonder Woman and him sit back in the library or whatever. And she's like, all right, hey, well, here's the thing. I've got a lasso. I'm gonna just, like, wrap you in it a little bit. And he's like, okay, is like, what's going on? And she's like, well, here's the thing. You worked with the League in certain capacities in the past. And he's like, what capacities? And it's like, well, if you don't have your memory, it's like top secret stuff, and we don't want to, like, get into it, you know, if you don't truly not remembering stuff of your past. So I'm just going to put the lasso on you and ask you questions. And he's like, all right, go. So she's like, all right, do you have any memory of meeting the Justice League prior to tonight? And he's like, nope, not at all. What do you think of the Justice League? You guys are cool, happy with it. How much of that conversation did you hear with Alfred and all that out there? And he's like, nothing. I just heard my name being said towards the end of it. And it's just like, okay. And do you trust us? And he's like, oh, I trust everybody until I'm given a reason not to. And at that point, she's like, okay, this ain't him. He trusts everybody. This ain't Batman. So goes back out into the room, and he's just like, all right, so what can I do for you guys? And they're like, actually, we're good. We're good. We don't really need your help. You know, you've helped us before through Wayne Tech. That's what it was. We won't go into details about it, but it's greatly appreciated. We're just gonna see you out. And he's like, okay, well, if you need anything, bye. And as they leave, all the League's talking, and Wonder Woman's like, yeah, nah, he's not Batman. I don't know what he is now. So we cut over to Jim Gordon, who's bandaging himself up. He's beaten, he's bruised, he's cut up, he looks like hell. He looks in the mirror and just like, yeah, all right, Semper Fi, all that stuff. I was a military man. And he goes out to a Little League baseball game, and he's like, this is what it's all about. this is the reason that I do the Batman stuff, is Gotham sucks. It's a horrible city of like criminals and stuff like that. But if I can make people feel safe enough that they can come out and watch their kids have a Little League game, that's what I do it for. And he catches a fly ball that's heading out towards the fences, and he throws it back into the people when all of a sudden he gets a call. And it's from his handlers up in the blimp, Julia and whoever else. And it's just like, hey, we're taking on fire up here in the blimp. There are a bunch of F-15s flying around. Like, we need your help ASAP. And he's like, it's my night off. But all right, yeah, that makes sense. The suit can't fly, though. That was pretty established beforehand. I need flight capabilities. He's like, right, we already tweaked that. You got flight in your suit now. Don't worry about it. Meet up for the suit is coming into secure location. So he runs down there. The suit does like an Iron Man around him, just literally like closes around him. And he starts flying up to the blimp. And as he says, like, yeah, okay, it's 4 F-15s. They're all taking shots. And he's like, okay, well, if it's military, then you should be calling, like, the government. Call the governor. Call anyone. Why are they firing at you? And so like, yeah, well, we aren't getting a pickup. No one's answering. We don't know what to do here. So at that point, he sees one of the F-15s, and he's like, all right, well, they don't have missiles on them. So it's just tiny, like, smaller caliber bullets. Still decently sized caliber for a jet, but not, like, absolutely going to blow you out of the sky. And then he immediately gets shot by a bunch and starts getting blown out of the sky. He does manage to right himself, comes up and just been like, okay, yep, let me see what's going on with this jet. And he starts like flying at one, it's flying at him, and he tells them like, fire reverse thrusters on my mark. And then he grabs hold of it and like holds onto the canopy. He rips it off and does a internal like infrared scan or whatever of this pilot, and it turns out that the pilot has some sort of mind control device on his head, some sort of machine. And he's like, yeah, he's not in control, he's not doing whatever, we got to figure out what's up. So he pulls the pilot out as another jet is flying in and starts shooting at them. So the jet goes down. He's like, here, I pulled your chute. I ripped off your mind control thing. Just get rid of your chute when you hit the water. And as that jet starts plummeting down to the city, in comes the Justice League. And they're like, can we help out? So they start taking care of the jets. Gordon advises them, hey, the people inside are mind controlled. Don't like injure them. Just, keep the blimp safe. And Batman decides to, while they've got that under control, he's going to trace back the transmission source for the mind control stuff. And wouldn't you know, it's Mad Hatter. He's just sitting there with a little, like, RC car controller, talking in Lewis Carroll rhymes, and just like, all right, Mad Hatter, what's up? What are you doing? And he's like, oh, I was hired to be a mercenary because somebody wanted the bat plane out of the sky, and they were going to fill the void by selling their services to the highest bidder and whatever else. But I don't know nothing about nothing else. And so he just dumps Mad Hatter along with Julia and them up in the blimp, just being like, all right, well, I guess arrest this guy because, like, he's committed God knows how many crimes just now. The pilots are safe. Everything's good. And Julia's like, yeah, the Justice League, they swung up here once they took care of the jets. They want to talk to you, like, right now, over in the park. And Gordon flies over, and as he's flying over, he's like, oh my God, I'm just now realizing, like, I just fought with the Justice League. That's awesome. This is, like, greatest night. So he flies over and he meets up with the League, just chilling out in the park. And he's like, all right, well, I'm try to play it cool. And he's like, oh, I'm glad you haven't left Gotham. Thank you so much for the assistance. He's like, yeah, no, it's what we do. Anyway, let's cut to the chase. And he's like, right, yeah, you probably want something. What's up? And it's just like, we need your help. And he's like, I am not Justice League material. I just want to make it clear. I am needed in Gotham. I fight very low-level, street-level stuff. I'm not really up to parademons and all that other stuff that you guys do. Yeah, I'm not a League member. And they're like, right, no, we get that, but we have a situation going on where we don't need the Batman who is able to fight against parademons and do all that stuff. We need a detective. You're a detective. Like, that's kind of your job before you became Batman. So we actually just need that. And he's like, all right, well, fair enough. If you want that, so be it. And Cyborg tacks a little teleporter thing onto his back, and they teleport to somewhere snowy. And Batman's like, where are we? And Superman says, somewhere above your pay grade. As we see in this snowy region is a giant skeleton that's like at least 60 feet tall. So yeah, that's there. I mean, I'm down for it. I I usually like Tomasi stuff. Tomasi does some good work, so I'm okay with this run in a conceptual sense. It's a weird thing because Detective is one of those books where every writer can just take a different idea on it. Usually, they try to make it the more street level book. They try to make it the idea of like, okay, well, Batman's going to be the more overarching, like Batman's doing cool stuff, whereas Detective's the more street level. We're going to take a look at like more small level crimes instead of Joker level stuff. And there's nothing wrong with that. This, however, is pivoted. Batman is now more street level because we're doing the whole Bloom arc over there. And then this is just going to say, well, let's put him on the Justice League. Let's see what we can do. I mean, I'm down to see where it goes. I like the art style. Marcio Takara does a great job. So whatever we do with it, I'm happy with it. I'm going to say this is I'll just say a 7. It's got promise, but this particular issue, I mean, half of it was spent on the Bruce stuff and those front pages with like the eyeball sucking. If that's really the problem that the whole Justice League's coming together on, I expect it to be a little bit more. So 7 for now. Action Comics number 45, written by Greg Pak and Aaron Kuder, art by Scott Colin. So this is the start of a new arc, but it is kind of flowing out of the last arc. A lot of the consequences have rolled over there, but we'll get to it. So we open up with a shot of Superman out in the middle of a hurricane, saving like a boat and like people on there as a helicopter's coming down. And it's like, well, I mean, the whole world knows he's Clark Kent and his approval rating's at like under 25%, but damn it if he just doesn't keep on going and making people think he's Superman. And we see this is all a news article. It's something going on the screen. And we're in a restaurant in Alabama where Larry, the line cook, is like, screw that guy. He's a prick. He's an alien. And we see on the news, Perry White steps up and he kind of denounces Clark and says, like, look, we all agree Superman was a cool guy. Like, he was good. He was great. But, like, he put us all at risk because of his lies, and, like, I got shot last time, so, you know, I'm kind of biased. And also, he was fighting against Batman, and Batman at this point is government appointed, so how can the government do something wrong? And we see Larry's basically like, nah, he sucks, he's awful, he's a fascist, screw that guy. And the waitress there named, I don't know, Tiffany, whatever her name is, Brittany, is defending, saying like, no, hey, he saved my cousin in a mine collapse or something a few years ago. Even if he's an alien, he's better than like any of the humans I've ever met. And Larry's just like, but this is America. And we see that there's a man, very buff, very big, sitting over at the nearby, don't want to call it a bar, but, you know, like the coffee shops have one facing out to the outside street. And as they're arguing and as it starts to get more personal, where like she's like, oh, well, maybe if you made your orders right, like we'd make more money or whatever, and blah, blah, blah. Eventually Clark's like, because it's Clark, I failed to mention that. He's sitting there, he's wearing some sort of disguise he picked up from Wayne Tech that like masks his face so he's not immediately recognized. But he's like, I am getting so angry at hearing this guy. And like, I don't usually get angry, but since I lost my powers, I'm starting to get angry. So as the fight continues to get bigger, he says like, look, I'm fighting a creature named Wrath, and Wrath feeds off of negative human emotions and when they're angry and whatnot. And like, as I watch this happening, I don't want to get involved because I'm only going to feed Wrath more. However, we see that the sprinkler system goes off. Everyone starts running out, and Brittany's like, oh no, I lost my tips or whatever. But then we see that Clark has left like $50 tip on a single coffee. So he's like, I shouldn't have done that, but you know, I had to do something. So we see he makes his way out to a national forest nearby. He's got a cabin with all this high-tech stuff inside. He's got a bioscan and whatnot. He's very worried about his security at this point. And he breaks it down and says like, look, recently in my books and across all the other stuff, I fought against Ukur, Beast of the Subterraneans. Dawn Command teamed up with them, and they made a bunch of energy-sapping weapons. The government's involved. I had Hoarder Root, who knew about my identity and all that, and he could drain my power. And then there's Wrath, who also showed up. a whole bunch of things, and I don't see a connection, but I'm starting to figure out like where different connections could be. And he also feels bad about getting people in his personal life involved. He doesn't want any of that involved. He sees Lee Lambert, who was previously infected by the black ink stuff, and just like, yeah, I don't want that happening to anybody else. When all of a sudden, the security system goes off. There's someone at the door. He immediately goes over, grabs them before they're able to do anything. It's Hero, the toy master, and he's like, hey, Clark, yeah, I've been trying to track you down. This is crazy. I haven't seen you since your identity got revealed. This room has so much stuff. I'm going to scan it real quick for all this other stuff. And Clark goes and asks the computer, like, hey, was he followed? And the computer goes, nah, he's good. And then all of a sudden, Clark just grabs him by the collar, smashes the glass box with a button inside of it, and the whole place explodes. And he's like, what are you doing? Clark goes, if you could find me, someone else could find me. I'm compromised. Do not contact me again. He's like, what? No, bro, I've been like an assistant to at least 2 of your story arcs before. The Mongol stuff and the other thing with the Phantom Zone. Like, I want to help you. I want to be a part of you. You can't just shut me out. And he's like, if you come back, I will let the government know about your trademark and patent violations. He's like, you wouldn't. He's like, oh, I would. Get out of here, Toy Master. So he goes off into the woods, and Hero's like, oh, Jesus, all right, fine. We then go back to Clark's old neighborhood, where we see everyone is fixing up after the last arc. There was a whole lot of destruction, but everyone's coming together. And Lee Lambert, who of course did get infected with the black alien whatever, sees a man struggling to get out of a manhole, just like, oh, hey, let me help you up. He's like, no, don't worry, I got it. And then another person comes up saying, hey, let me help you up. And he goes, hey, thanks, really needed that help. And Lee's like, what? So we then see Officer Petrozelli, who was the female cop towards the end of one of the last issues. She's recovering. She talks to Lee like, hey, yeah, no, things have been crazy here. There's all this stuff. You were infected with black goo. How's that going for you? She's like, well, it's a daily process. And then all of a sudden, some government agents show up, and they're like, Officer Petrozelli, hello, we know that you're a friend of Lee Lambert. Could you point us in her direction? And she's like, yes, I think she went that direction. Meanwhile, Lee is on the other side of the page. So we see that Clark has taken up a job doing truck driving, and it seems like he's like used to this. It seems like this is a job he's been doing for some point. He's taken the name of Archie Clayton, and he's like, yeah, I've been working every day here for weeks. I go in, I take the truck, I take it where it needs to go. Turns out that this was all part of like an infiltration thing. It's planning for trying to find Wrath. And we see that this truck drop off is actually for like cleaning of towels and stuff. It's a laundry service or whatever. And he's picking up a bunch of dirty towels at this Life Gene Incorporated, which apparently is on the books just doing a bunch of like anti-mold spray or whatever. However, he sees that this place has a huge facility, and there's a giant door that is not on any schematics, and nobody ever goes in or out of it, and it's like totally secret. And he's like, well, I just want to know what's on the other side of the door. Because he figures out that sorry, I can't remember the exacts of it. He figures out that because the mayor of Metropolis was actually just Wrath in disguise, the mayor made several trips here over the past year, and because it's so out of the ordinary, this place is so boring, and it's in a completely different state, he's like, I got to check this out. So he manages to do a whole bunch of like tech stuff to make a power outage happen, and while the power outage is going on, he pries open the doors because security's all busy doing other stuff, and as he gets inside, he sees a whole bunch of people, all with the black goo powers, and then we see them like riding out. They're all being kept prisoner, and they're all being somewhat experimented on. And some of the security guards are like, oh, what the hell, security breach? And he's like, I'm just the laundry guy. And they're like, no, you're not the laundry guy. And he's like, fair enough. And he sees a young girl crying out for help, and he's like, well, that's all I needed. And he tears open his shirt, goes full Superman, and he starts throwing around security guards until he gets to the girl. Girl runs back over to the mom, who was also being experimented on here. And as he starts freeing all these people, security guards go down. He's just like, hey, hi, how's it going? My name's Clark. What's your name? He's like, Donnie. I was infected with black stuff, and they grabbed me. And then one of the security guards just like, Kent, get away from them. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm trying to save them. And he's like, yeah, no, look, they can be controlled. Like, they can be kept down. If you get infected, if you don't control yourself, and then Clark just backhands him. And he tears open the final box, which it turns out has Lee Lambert inside. And it looks like she's having a real hard time controlling her black goo. Her entire arm is just this huge, bulky mass. And Clark gets infected. The goo leaps over to him, latches onto his body. And Lee says, "Oh, Clark, you should have listened." So, oh no, he's got black goo powers. What does that mean? He's got black goo powers. Yeah, no, it's a fine enough start for an arc, saying, okay, we introduced this wrath goo stuff beforehand, and Clark himself has said how much he's been feeling angry, so maybe this is just going to be a thing where he has to calm himself down, and he has to not be as angry, and he'll overcome his black goo infection. But we're going to have a few issues in the in-between where it's him giving into the anger, which leads me to say, isn't this just the Doomed storyline? Didn't we just do this with Clark? Like, I'm so angry, I'm turning into Doomsday, and then he became Doomsday? Like, that seems very familiar. Art-wise, it looks great. I really don't have a problem with that. Writing, I mean, it's... I don't want to say it's like scattershot, but it does, we're setting up the arc, so we have to jump around a little bit, get all the different threads moving, and then as they converge, we're going to get one narrative storyline. So it's fine with what it is. The only thing I'm a little bit about is the Toymaster stuff, because he did send him packing, and it looks like he did actually leave. So maybe we'll get him back in a future issue, but it, for me, just felt like a way of showing Clark's commitment to being alone, which... I don't know. I don't feel like we really needed that at this point. I think that the previous arc kind of showed, and the other books especially showed how necessary that was. So it's 50-50 for me, but we'll see how it turns out. Overall, this one, I'll say 7.5. I'm feeling that. It's somewhere around there. It's just not blowing me away quite yet, but the arc has a lot of promise. Omega Men number 5, written by Tom King, art by Barnaby Bagenda. So last issue was mostly just a bit of character development, some fleshing out of backstories. This one is back to the story proper, and we pick up on planet Shangri-Lin, which is like a religious sort of planet, whatever else, and as we established in a previous issue, kind of a little bit corrupt. So we see that the Omega Men are walking their way up some stairs to a main cathedral. And Brute specifically is being, like, accosted by all the different members of his race, mind you, and they're all shouting how he's a sinner and a heathen and a fraud, and they're throwing crap at him, and he's just like, oh, well, it's a good thing they're not throwing stones. Stones are sacred things. And as he makes his way up the stairs, Scraps is behind, just being like, all right, I'm ready to start shooting people. This is enough. And Primus is like, no, don't you do that. This is a sacred place. But she just keeps on going, just like, oh, you're all convinced that you guys are so clean, but we've already proven, Brute told you that the priests are all corrupt, and yet you just refuse to see that. You all suck. And then they start accosting her as well, and she's like, oh yeah, you know what? How about this? Come on, true believers, I'll take you to Omega myself. And Brute steps up being like, no, don't do this. This is a distraction. The mission is inside the temple. Let's go. So they go in, and we see on the inside is the High Pontifex, which is basically just their pope. And he's like, oh yes, I welcome the Omega Men, and also the King of Euphorix, who is the father, of course, of, what's her name? The Callista, that's it. And this is essentially just going to be a neutral ground, a sanctuary where an exchange for the hostage can be taken. So the king is going to give the Omega Men something, and then the Omega Men are going to give Callista back to the king. That's the idea of it. And the king's just like, oh, my daughter, are you all right? And she's like, just someone give me a sword. And the pope's like, no. There's no killing here. This is neutral ground. We're not doing anything. This is between Alpha and Omega. So we see that the king's just like, yes, I know you don't take bribes or whatever else. You take donations. So here's a big old chunk of what's essentially space gold, and that's a donation to you and your people. And Primus calls out, just being like, yeah, you your religion is so much better, the Brahmin religion, despite the fact that you let all of these people who are natives to your planet be slaughtered by the upper class. And he's just like, yeah, whatever. So we see that tied up here along with Callista is Kyle, but he has a mask on them. He's not allowed to show that he is still Kyle, because Kyle, theoretically, is dead. So at that point, he's like, all right, well, you've got your treasure. Why don't you give me my daughter? And it turns out that the deal is that there is a giant rock in this place, and it is kind of a rite of passage sort of thing, where it gets explained later on, but the idea of it is that inside this rock is a key called the Alpha Key, and the key to Alpha, whatever you want to call it. And it essentially is a get into heaven free card. So all these people who sin, they want to try to break this giant, massive rock because they believe that inside is just a cure-all, like all sins forgiven, get into heaven sort of thing. And everyone, like, it's just a fairy tale. Some people believe in it, some people don't, but this rock is theoretically where it's supposed to be. And so we see Callista is explaining all this to Kyle, saying like, yeah, this is what's going on. They're going to try, like, you're only allowed to try it by donating to the church. And so this sort of exchange deal that we got going on here is we're going to let Brute break the rock. That's what the goal here is. And Callista, mind you, is still pretending not to be an Omega Man, still pretending to be a hostage. So she's just like, hey, they're crazy. They're never going to be able to do it, and they're crazy. They're insane people. So we see the Pope gives the whole song and dance saying like, ah, yes, Brute here has been excommunicated because he said some naughty, naughty things to me, but I viewed him as a son once long ago, so let him come up here and try to get his salvation once again. Brute, are you ready to be breaking the stone? And he casts off his cloak, and he's like, let's go. And he just starts tackling this boulder, just starts really going at it, going crazy. And the Omega Men just sit and watch. So we then go hours later. Brute's knuckles are bloodied and all that. And Doc, the robot who's back on the ship, calls up Primus because he was kept in charge of watching for the Citadel, watching to see if any of them start arriving onto the ship. And Doc's very scatterminded. He's like, oh, well, you know, I called to tell you something, because usually I'm in the medical center, and this is a lot different than the medical center. In fact, it's nothing at all. And Primus is like, Doc, focus, why did you call? And he's like, oh, right. Turns out I did some scans, and I was watching the skies, watching like space to see if the Citadel ships were coming in, but it turns out they didn't need to, because they were already on the planet. And Primus is like, what? How many? And he's like, oh, quite a few. I'd imagine, quite a bit. In fact, if I had to guess, I'd say they probably made a deal with the Pope in that all of this was just a trap from the very beginning. And they're going to come in, take the temple, and you're probably all going to die rather painfully, I imagine. And at that point, Primus is like, okay, thank you, Doc. Hey, Tigor, we gotta step off to the side. We got to talk. So at that point, they're talking like, look, this is a sacred space. We can't start killing people here. If we do that, the Omega Men, their message across the universe is going to be screwed. We need to get the key and then just run. That is our only option out of here. And Brute's just still throwing punches, but he starts giving up. He starts falling to his knees, and he's like, if I keep going, I'm going to die. Like, this is the end of it for me. And the Pope steps up, and he's like, look at you. You were so desperate to be forgiven for your sins, and you are willing to do all of this. You know what? As Pope, I say to everyone, I say to all the people here, let's let him back in. Look how desperate he is to find salvation. Is that not what the religion is all about? Forgiving those who ask for forgiveness. Everyone else is cool with it, and everyone's like, may it please Omega. And he's just like, yes, of course. The key to Alpha will not be your salvation. I am. I decide that you are back in the good graces, and that you once again are good to go and all that. And as he's just doing this whole big pompous thing, Kyle is talking to Callista because he sees Tigor and Primus are freaking out and like are getting uppity with each other, and he's like, no, something's going on here. Something's not, they've lost control. Something's going on here. And Callista's like, oh god, oh geez, something's going on outside of my plan. I mean, yeah, no, crazy. Well, I wonder what it could be. I wonder what's going on with them. So at that point, Tigor comes up and tells Kyle like, hey, guess what? You're going to learn what it means to be an Omega Man after all. So in comes the Citadel. They start crashing in through the stained glass windows. They don't immediately fire yet. They're just like, no, look, we're not going to do anything. We're not, like, everyone's staying down, and they're telling the Omega Man to surrender. And the Pope's just like, brute, because you've been forgiven, because I can grant you sanctuary. Like, your Omega Man friends, they're kind of screwed, but like you, I've got your salvation here. And he says, I worked with the Citadel, and I've got so much donations that I can now buy all of the priests on this planet. I can bribe them all. I can own them. And when I own all the priests, then I can do anything I want. I can decide who becomes the new brute and who does not, who gets salvation, who does not. I essentially become the alpha within my own right. So at that point, he offers him back his original name, which is Charis Nar. And he's like, yeah, is that what you want? And Brute just gets up to his feet. He's trembling, and he's just like, you believe only in treasure. I am only brute. I am sinned. I am condemned, but I am knowing Omega. And he goes up to the rock one more time, and with all of his anger, he just smashes it, and out comes the Alpha Key. And he's like, what? No, that belongs to me. That belongs to the Pope. That belongs to the church. You got to get back the Alpha Key. And he's like, I just got the key. All I need to do to go to heaven is to die right now. Holding the key would let me into heaven, no problem. And he takes it, and he chucks it up into the air. Lasers start going off like crazy. Scraps catches it, ducks out through a stained glass window, and escapes from the rest of the Citadel. The Pope is like, no, you screw you. You're always going to be brute. You suck. The rest of the Omega Men start being taken captured by the Citadel, and the Pope's just calling out Brute, saying like, you're nothing but a sinner, a heathen, a liar. And he ends up saying Omega Man, and that's where the Citadel unmasks Kyle to reveal that he's still alive. So, yeah, a lot going on. I really like this issue. It's poignant in its point. It makes it very clear, like, they're making a little thing here about the corruption of like the organized religion, but not making any sort of negative about faith as a whole. Like, the whole book is hinging on this idea of faith, of the Omega and all that. So the idea that they're coming down on the fact of this church is nothing but just bribes and all that, I like that concept because it does bring a lot of truth of real world stuff, of obviously how there are people doing this for less positive means, I guess I would say, less trying to improve the lives of people and just improve the lives of themselves. And then, yeah, it's also forwarding the plot because obviously this is all set in motion. They knew they were going to do this. That's why they captured Callista, to make this sort of arrangement. It's all part of a larger plan, and it's cool to see it all unfold issue over issue. So, yeah. Curious to see where it goes here. I remember reading it, but I don't remember the exact formation we get. I just kind of know where it ends up. So I'm into it. I'd give this one an 8.5. Love it. Green Arrow number 45, written by Benjamin Percy, art by Patrick Zircher. So last issue we got all the backstory on how George the wolf dog is actually magic, and a bunch of skeleton guys want his bones, and then there's a new character of Tarantula who is helping out. Just go with it. So we pick up with the fight scene about how Green Arrow is fighting off all these skeleton guys, and Tarantula is helping in the fight, just being like, oh, you can fight me, you can do whatever, but don't take my dog. And they're saying like, okay, well, what do we do? Tarantula's saying, follow me. And he's like, what about my dog? It's like, well, you can't help him if you're dead. So apparently underneath of his normal outfit he's wearing, he had his Green Arrow costume. So he gets that all set up. He has a bow like hidden in his belt as far as I could tell. So, that's weird. But they make their way out. They're just trying to run. Tarantula has a gun that shoots spider webs. So she uses that, traps them. They start running across the rooftops. And Oliver makes note of how it's disconcerting for the skeleton men because they don't say anything. They don't make like any noise. They're not gloating. They're not saying, we'll get your dog. Like, they're just silent, which makes them feel that much more powerful. And as they reach the end of a particularly long jump, they can't make the rooftops. Tarantula pulls out a grappling gun, fires off a shot, and it doesn't get them up to the next rooftop, but they swing and they end up crashing into a giant window where it's some woman's bathroom. She's taking a bath, and they just land in the bath with her. The skeleton men throw some knives, which bounce off the edge of the tub, but it cracks enough that the entire tub floods the bathroom. And the skeleton men just watch on from across the room. And we get the bit where Oliver says, like, look, I see them watching. This isn't the first time they came to Seattle. However, the last time was during the sneak peek where Oliver was just not in town. I think he went to Alaska or something like that. And like Emiko was like, oh, Oliver, you have to help. Everything's falling apart because they set fire to like the Space Needle or whatever. And I guess that was the end of it. Like that was, I thought the sneak peek was saying like, oh, we're finally getting to that story here. No, turns out that was something that happened in the past, and they only set that fire because they were breaking into a museum where they killed the security guard, broke open a giant totem pole, and inside the head of the totem pole was a bear skull. So they wanted the bones. Skeletons want bones. And then they drew a Mayan symbol for bone on the wall because they're nothing if not on brand. So we see some time has passed. Oliver is in a car with Tarantula, both in their civvies, and they are driving down a road down to Mexico, down to Catalina's home. Actually, it may not be Mexico. It says El Paso, so maybe it is in the U.S., but regardless, they're driving down, and Catalina makes fun of how Oliver needs sunglasses, and he's squinting all the time, even with the sunglasses. And it's like, yeah, I live in Seattle. It's cloudy all the time. The sun bothers me. So at that point, she chastises him like, look, we're taking a rental car. If you were a real superhero, you'd be in a jet. And he's like, I'm not Batman. I can't just take my jet wherever I want. And so they just bicker back and forth a little bit. And he's like, look, I don't, like, she's clearly not someone who's totally open, and I don't know if I could trust her. But regardless, I got to, like, we have to go through this either way. And as night starts to fall, he flips on the headlights, and he basically says, like, look, what's going on? What's your history? And she's like, hey, you know all those genocides that have happened over the years, all these horrible things that have happened? He's just like, yeah, what about it? And he's just like, what's happening right now in Mexico is just as bad. All the beheadings and kidnappings and mass graves. It's a place gets infected by darkness, and you just have to be able to get it out. But it turns out, because he's turned on the headlights, the Jeep now gets infested, swarmed by this group of moths. And they're on the windshield. He can barely see. So he has to pull over to a gas station super quickly. He gets out a flare arrow and shoots it up in the sky, and all the moths start swarming over to that. And just like, all right, fair enough. We're pulled over to a gas station. Let's go ahead and get some gas and stock up on supplies and whatnot. But as they try to make their way into the store, it's locked up, and just like, that's weird. And she finds a bloody tooth down on the ground, just being like, all right, something happened here. So they walk in very carefully. Oliver flips on the lights, and all over the walls are these same Mayan symbols that were drawn in blood as before. And Catalina is like, yeah, they're Mayan. One's for bone, one's for snake, one's for spirit. And then she looks over at the owner of the shop who's sitting at the desk. He's super dead, stabbed numerous times, teeth pulled out, eyes pulled out, and he's just like, oh yeah, and that's the symbol for death right there. Do you know what this means, Oliver? It means that the darkness is spreading and it's crossed the border. So yeah, that's the issue. I don't know, this one had some fun moments to it, but I don't think it felt like a complete issue. By the time it's done, it didn't, like, we got a chase scene that's just picking up from the last issue, which didn't like tell us anything more. Then it gave us a little bit about how they robbed a museum, and frankly just felt like a retcon that sneak peek story, because that definitely felt like it was part of a larger thing that we were only getting a smaller piece of, but regardless. And then this one, it's just ending with this road trip thing that honestly doesn't feel like it ends on like a big note either. It ends on a little bit, it's spooky. I'll give it that. It's spooky, but it doesn't feel like it's a climax. It just feels like, oh no, this thing we were going to anyway is closer than we thought it was going to be. Dun dun dun. So it's, again, not a bad issue, but it's very fast paced. It doesn't feel like a full issue for me. And I think I'd say this one is probably I'd say 6.5. It's just not getting there for me. It's not up to the good standards. It's still okay. It's still like art's fine, rating's fine. Like, I don't have problems with the technical aspects. It just doesn't feel like a full story's worth an issue for me. Midnighter number 5, written by Steve Orlando, art by Stephen Mooney. So last issue was a team up with Grayson. This continues that. They're looking for a man named Akakevich, who apparently is the guy who took all of Midnighter's God Garden tech. So we open up this one with some sort of run, some group that just does a group running thing. And Matt, Midnighter's boyfriend, is a part of it. And everyone's just like, well, you got to keep up, Matt. I mean, isn't there some sort of physical requirement for dating a superhero? He's just like, yeah, you know, whatever. And they make a point of showing that Matt has a CD player on his belt, like he's using that to listen to music on the run. He's like, yeah, well, you know, had it ever since I was a kid, whatever. So once Matt gets back home, he calls, he gives Midnighter the update about like, oh yeah, our friends are doing fine, all that. How's it going with you? And meanwhile, he's in the middle of fighting a bunch of Russian spies and whatnot. And he's just like, oh yeah, you know, doing it very Russian. That's how it's doing here. Also, I got Agent 37 with me. He's helping out. And Matt's like, whoa, hold on. You called for backup? It's just like, no, he's an intern at best. So we cut over and we show Akakevich at his home, and his wife is like, oh, you don't want me to make dinner? Because he's already making dinner. And just be like, oh, a true man always provides. So it looks like they have some time together, and then when she goes to bed, he gets out some sort of technology, puts it on his ear, and teleports to Kazan, which I guess is where all of his technology and research is being done. So as he teleports in, everyone's like, oh, the boss is coming. Everyone focus up. Let's go. So as he arrives, they walk down this hallway, which has monsters. I don't think they're God Garden tech, but like 2 of them look like full-on werewolves. And then one of them is just like a man that's a mix of Freddy and Jason. So I'm not sure what this is, but regardless, it looks like they are some sort of experiments that they're working on. And Akakevich is like, all right, well, if you know everyone else is behind schedule on this stuff, let's bump it up. Let's do all this stuff. So we cut over to Midnighter and Grayson. They figured out the nano signature in the cellular technology. So they're going to use that to track in. Grayson's wondering how they're going to find out where he is. And Midnighter says part of the technology he has is anti-door technology, which won't let me portal in. So wherever I try to portal and can't, that's where he's at. And then we just got to go in physically. Midnighter, meanwhile, tucks something away in his coat and doesn't let Grayson see what it is, but Grayson notices. They head down into a subway, which I guess is the only way to get there. It's, you know, the only place to get into this 30 feet of concrete that surrounds Akakevich's secret station. All of the passengers are kept away because Akakevich has that much power that he's able to keep this place empty. And then all of a sudden, Midnighter pulls out a pair of handcuffs and handcuffs himself to Grayson. And Grayson's like, what the hell are you doing? He's like, it's been too easy up till now. I want to have some fun. This is where we get to see if we can really find our dynamic. And as the train pulls up out, or as they make their way onto the train and it pulls up to the next station, they get out and find a whole bunch of cybernetically enhanced bears. And these are the ones we saw inside of the cells earlier. Grayson and Midnighter fight. And as they continue down the train, just more and more stations, they keep on meeting more and more crazy-ass things they have to fight. So, yeah, it's... and they're doing it all handcuffed, obviously. It makes for some interesting visuals of them, like, kicking and shooting and having to do whatever. But regardless, they make their way through. And Grayson questions, hey, wait a minute. He's set the trap. Like, he knows we're coming. He could do whatever once we get there. Why is he sending these things for just the ride down? And it's just like, oh, it's pretty simple. He's just showing off. So they get down to the last stop, and they show that sitting on top is this giant werewolf-looking thing. And Grayson's like, are you still prepared for this? And he's like, oh, of course. And he pulls out this giant sword from his coat, to which point, I guess this is some sort of mythical beast of Atlatl. I'm unfamiliar, but Grayson says, yeah, well, the beast, if you want to kill it, it requires a spear. You got a sword. And he's like, yes, of course. The spear is me. And Grayson's like, you got to be kidding me. So Grayson does some acrobatics, gets up on top of the wolf's neck, wraps his legs around it, and then pulls Midnighter up fast enough that I guess technically with the sword extended, he can be considered a spear. And manages to pierce the head of this werewolf and takes him down. And that's when he's like, see, the handcuffs were functional. Like, they allowed for that to happen. Do you think I would really just handcuff us for fun? And Grayson's like, yes, that is absolutely a thing you would do. And he's like, yeah, fair enough. So Grayson asks, can we undo the handcuffs now that we're like at the final boss door? And he's like, nope, we're going into the boss round just like this. So they kick down the doors. Everyone goes running except for Akakovich, who's on the phone. And he's like, excuse me, just one minute. Yes, absolutely. Sorry about that. Good to receive you. And Midnighter starts throwing knives at him. To which point, apparently Akakovich has used a telekinesis appliance, which is one of the things that he's got in his ear. And he's like, yeah, you can't stop me. I can do literally anything. You think I'd be defenseless? And he uses his, I don't know, powers. I don't think it's teleportation. I think it is actually just telekinesis, but he makes a hole in the ground, or makes a hole in the ceiling, that then he lifts them up, sends them through it, and they end up on a street above where he then seals the hole again. And Grayson's like, I thought you won fights. What was that? You completely got completely ruined there. And the handcuffs are split off by this point. And it's just like, look, Akakovich, killed all these people. He did all this stuff. He needs to go down. What is your plan? And he's like, my plan was the same plan that it was before. This is all part of the same plan. During that fight, I knew everything I needed to know about him, how he was going to fight, how he was going to do everything. And I made that moron throw us exactly where I wanted him to, directly into his teleport jammer. During the teleport thing, you get to see a satellite knocked off the wall. So now Midnighter's able to teleport in. He makes a door and just kicks Akakovich in the back of the head, knocking out the appliance. So now he's unable to use his telekinesis. And all the other scientists go running, and Akakovich is just pissed off. He's just like, you guys have all this power, but you never see the market value in this. You guys could be making bundles. And Midnighter throws a sharp shard right at Akakovich. Grayson throws one of his batons down to shatter it into a bunch of pieces, but that causes one of the shards not to kill him, but to embed itself into his lower spine, to which he's now paralyzed. And Akakovich is like, oh God, I can't feel my back. Oh God, what's going on? And Grayson's like, I'm not going to let you kill him. But he gets cut off, and Midnighter starts delivering a speech about all right, we got two options. Option A, you do nothing, you stay this way, but you won't feel any pain. Or you can go through the tough option, do some physical therapy, try to get back on your feet, but you're going to feel nothing but pain. And you're going to be relying on normal people to do all the stuff for you that you would taken advantage of for yourself for so long. And you could do it if you were strong enough, but we both know you're not actually there. And Midnighter looks at Grayson just being like, you act like you got me figured out. This was always the plan. So he gets up on Akakovich. Akakovich just starts laughing, and he says, you got it wrong again. Look, I hate to admit it because I want to be viewed as this guy who's got everything going on, but I'm not the one who stole it from your God Garden to begin with. I got it from an anonymous benefactor. I know nothing about them whatsoever. I'm just another middleman. So now what are you going to do, Mr. Fighter? And we cut to a shot of Grayson and Midnighter sharing some drinks in a hotel room. And Midnighter's like, yeah, I knew how that was going to go. I knew that if I threw that, you were going to shoot it into a million pieces. And then I knew that one of the shards was going to paralyze him. I was never going to kill him. Even if I would love to, I know that's against your rules, and I'm going to respect your rules while we're fighting together. But never doubt that I am always in control of the situation. And Grayson's like, fair enough. All right. You got all that stuff. Fair enough. So at that point, he calls him out and says, okay, but as much as you think you're in control, I don't think that you're in control of your life as you think you are, but whatever. And Midnighter then just continues drinking into the night. We then pick up back at his hometown where Matt is. Matt, apparently it's Thanksgiving. Sure. He's making a turkey and all that, and Midnighter's like, what the hell is this? And he's like, oh, it's Thanksgiving. Have you never had Thanksgiving before? He's like, no, it's my first one. And he's like, well, how is it so far? As they're sharing the meal later on that night, and he's like, oh, it's not the worst. And he's like, oh, I'll take it. And then we see, as they are embracing each other over Thanksgiving meal, in a helicopter outside, I believe is Multiplex, who has a sniper rifle trained right at the back of their heads, saying, all right, ready to take the shot. So, yeah, Multiplex, sure. Multiplex was in 2 issues ago, wasn't he? So it is a callback. We are at least getting that back on there. So, kudos. I mean, it's a fine enough issue. I don't know. For me personally, I'm not a huge fan of the daisy chain, of oh, you thought you had this thing, but in actuality, it's somebody else. Your princess is in another castle, basically. I can deal with one of those. 2 of those is pushing it, and that's where we're at now. I kind of don't think that we're not going to get a third one of those, because this seems like the kind of thing that this book would do, but I'm not going to chastise it for something it hasn't technically done yet. So it's a fine enough issue. It's well-paced, well-written. I do think it has a lot less interest than the previous one did. The handcuff thing with Grayson is cool, but because it's doing this thing where they keep on reaching different stations, it's more of a montage of them just fighting in handcuffs, and less so seeing like cool tricks and acrobatics that they are doing with the handcuffs. You get the one for the werewolf thing at the end, but nothing else in between there. So I don't know. It was missing out a little bit of something I think it could have done cool there, but as it stands, it's still an okay issue. I'd say 6.5. I think that's really where I'm landing at with this. It's just not grabbing me as previous issues kind of had, but it's still very well done in its own right. So take that for what you will. Batman Beyond number 5, written by Dan Jurgens, art by Bernard Chang. So before anything else, I just need to preemptively say up front, last issue, the last time I talked about this book, I got a comment from Bernard Chang himself saying, 7? You gave this book a 7 because I rated it a 7. I want to be clear that for this issue, the art is a 10. Not since Michelangelo has the art form been moved forward in such leaps and bounds as creatively as this. My God, it is a moving masterpiece that brought me to tears. Anyway, the rest of the book. So we've got last issue, Barbara and Tim went down into the basement of some place and they discovered, or Barbara knew it was here, the rookie suit from the Jim Gordon as Batman days. And Tim's like, oh God, we're bringing this out. So we pick up this issue and we see Brother Eye is just laying siege to Gotham. He's got all these cyborgs running around doing whatever. And then in comes the Justice League, which seemingly just consists of Superman, Wonder Woman, and John Stewart Green Lantern. Also all cyborgs. So they're destroying the town. And we cut back over to Tim and Barbara, who are just looking at the suit, and he's like, geez, this thing's like 30 years old. Is it even going to work? And he's like, yeah, well, Batman brought it in, made some upgrades to it. Like, we're doing what we can. You need a suit. You need a weapon because your current suit's out of commission. So, yeah, we're going to do it. And she's like, okay, but like it's a robot suit. Won't Brother Eye just take control of it immediately? And she says, nope, I'm disabling all external communications. There's no way into it. You're in a closed system. So as he's hopping, he's just like, all right, well, I can see why Dick always liked you. And they have a little banter about how like Barbara and Dick had crushes on each other or whatever. And she's like, let's not talk about that. That was forever ago. Don't worry about it. And so they get into the suit and he makes the comment of saying, you know, between everybody, I always thought I was the least likely to become Batman. Like, everyone else had better reasons to. I didn't want to be the same as any other Robin. And with Damian showing up, that only made things worse. But, like, now I guess I'm Batman. So that's neat. So he puts on the suit. It starts conforming to his body and doing whatever else. It's still the same suit, though. It looks identical until she activates some level of a camouflage tech, which doesn't actually camouflage it, but it makes it black and red to match the Beyond suit. And it's like, all right, there we go. And then all of a sudden they get a warning and alert saying, hey, Superman's blowing up Gotham. Maybe get back there. And just like, all right, can this suit take on Batman? It's like, or take on Superman? It's just like, well, I mean, you'll have to be tactically superior. That's the main thing there. Also, she gives some lore saying Brother Eye took out the Justice League, pushed their satellite into the moon, and that's where his base has been ever since then. It's just like, okay, fair enough, but we need to take the fight to him. That's the only way we're going to win all this. And it's like, all right, well, fair enough, but we got to take care of Superman first. So we cut over to Brother Eye, again, up on the moon with the daughter of Ink, and just like, all right, well, I got to find Tim Drake. This is pissing me off. And she's like, why do you care? It's one little human. What do you care? He's barely even a thing. And Brother Eye's like, no, you don't understand. Future's End. He's the one. I saw a future where I won, like, absolutely wholesale, no question. It was done. I won. And then he did whatever he did at the end of Future's End, and now we've adjusted into this timeline where, like, I'm still having to fight, and I don't like that. So I gotta get revenge on him. Also, why I made this humanoid body to give him something to punch, but we're not going to say that as the writers. So we see that Maya and Max, I think it's Maya, I might be wrong on that, they go and they're trying to escape the city on little airships before the Justice League shows up, and then, whoops, wouldn't you know it, Green Lantern shows up, ready to attack. And as he's about to fire off a shot, in comes Tim in the bat suit, and Max is like, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. Batman's back. So he comes in, manages to tackle out John. John's still alive, mind you, but Tim's just like, he was a good man. I hate to do this, but I got to recognize it's just Brother Ryan there. There's no John left. So John makes a rocket launcher construct, and Tim's like, oh, I could do that. So he pulls out rockets, fires it over at John, and essentially takes him out. End of the game there. We then see everyone's like running around. Max is like, I got to see if that's Tim. I need to know if it's still him alive. A couple of soldiers who are down on the ground are like, oh, that's the Batman from my youth. I remember that happening. Oh, is my Batman's back. And Tim's just basically saying, like, Gotham always sucked, but at the very least, we're defending it. Like, all these people are coming together, so that's neat. We're kind of a good city in that front. We see just a bunch of fighting down on the battlefield, and as Tim is doing whatever he can to try to fight against all the cyborgs, in comes Superman and Wonder Woman simultaneously. And Brother Eye's just mouthpiecing through them, just like, oh, it will not do you any good, although I'm surprised by your resourcefulness. And they just start wailing on Batman in the bat suit. He's like, I need to be able to get away from one of them. There's no way I'm going to be able to get to where I need to. And we see Micron, who's been, giant this whole time. He looks over and he's like, oh, okay, there's the big guns. And he shrinks down to microscopic size, leaps inside of the Wonder Woman body, and is just like, all right, this is going to get nasty. And he expands inside of her to basically explode her from the inside out. And Superman, Brother Eye, is like, oh, Micron is here. He's the only one to elude me. And so he's about to start trying to attack Micron, but Tim launches out of the bat suit and says, oh, that's not the only surprise. And he's wearing the kryptonite ring that Batman, of course, always had, and he punches Superman in the face with it, says like, oh, yep, Batman always had a way out, even against Superman, and he forces Superman to swallow the ring, thus taking him out of the fight just long enough for Micron to just bring the hammer down. Full size, just boom, crushes Superman. So Justice League has been neutralized. They took him out. We then see Tim's get back into the suit. He's talking to Micron. Everyone's like, yeah, you did it. We're great, cool. And finally, he's like, all right, Brother Eye, you keeping an eye on this? You watching me? Because I'll tell you what I'm about to do next. I'm going to take you out, man. And we see Barbara catches up in the bat plane. They're all making their way out. This is the last chance that they have. They're heading over to, I guess, some place that is going to have, like, a last-ditch weapon. They really don't make it clear as to what's happening, but they arrive at this mansion, and he's like, yep, we always had backup. And Brother Eye's like, what are you talking about? Oh no. Oh, everyone, get to that place. All forces converge. And we see that this mansion apparently belonged to the Court of Owls because it has a bunch of owl motifs, and Tim says, beware the Court of Owls, blah, blah. He presses on a secret statue, which opens a secret wall, and we don't see what's on the inside. But Barbara says, are you sure this will do the trick? And Tim says, well, it better not. Also, or it better, if not, there's no tomorrow. Also, we're out of Bruce's old toys. So whatever's in here belong to Court of Owls. I'm thinking it's just going to be a bunch of Talons. I'm thinking they're just going to use a horde of undead Talons to attack all of the cyborgs. But, like, does that work? I don't know. I have no idea. So we'll see what's going to happen. But art is amazing. Art is a 10. Art's fantastic. Bernard Chang, if you're watching this. No, honestly, I do think the art's one of the stronger bits here. I think it's very good. I will say this book, it's 5 issues now. I've kind of been saying the same thing each time, where it feels just so weird because it feels so disconnected from Future's End, despite being a direct consequence of that. But I do think that this one has a bit more of finally making sense as to what's happening, with that Brother Eye part saying, oh, I saw this other timeline, and then this timeline is what ended up with. So you get a little bit more on what's happening there. But no, I think this one is just kind of coming into its own because it doesn't feel like it's so much of Tim floundering around trying to make sense of like, what's going on? What are we doing? Oh God, and who's this new Batman? It feels like, no, he is Batman. He's made a name for himself. He's falling into line of what he should be as a hero here. And everything else that follows is just the adventure. It's just going on and having fun with it. We don't have to worry about where it fits in continuity now. So yeah, I'm good with it. I think it's a solid issue. I'm going to say this one is, I'll say a 7. Not for art though. For art it's a 10. But for the general book it's a 7. Cyborg number 3, written by David F. Walker, art by Ivan Reis and Eduardo Pensica. So this is a weird one because it feels like I missed an issue. I didn't. It's just this way. So last issue we had just like a random noise or whatever. Cyborg's like, oh, I'm catching a signal, something's happening. And then we saw the Techno-Sapiens go and contact this random dude inside an apartment that I think we knew a little bit about. This issue picks up immediately afterwards, and they're like, oh, we are the Techno-Sapiens, Robert Zarowski, you have cyborg implants or whatever in you, you will join us. And then we see some portals opening up and some more Techno-Sapiens coming out, and then Robert joins the Techno-Sapiens. He's brought in and says, I can hear their song. And then it points to 24 hours later. And it's just now a full-scale invasion. We just skip over that bit where it's like, oh, well, let's show their first attacks and let's show Cyborg responding and let's show all that. No, 24 hours later, we've now got a little band of rebels that are coming up against this group. And Cyborg's leading them throughout the streets. And he's just like, oh, yeah, well, you know, we got to hold back. We've got some injured and whatnot here. And it's like, yeah, this is just kind of normal for Justice League stuff. He's driving brunch with Aquaman, but I'm tis. So Cyborg senses a few of them up ahead, and he's like, yeah, I can still pick up their signal. Like, I can hear it. It's like a whirring in my head. I quieted down, but it's getting up louder. And one of the persons with him is like, hey, I thought you could teleport. And he's like, I can boom too, but it's unpredictable, and I can't do this many people stable. So you guys just hold on, hold back a second. I'll take care of this. And he gets a sonic cannon out, and he turns the corner and starts blasting away at him. And a bunch of the other people who do have weapons, like shotguns and stuff, they come up, they do whatever. We see that Robert, also now a Techno-Sapien, comes up, and he's like, you are the chosen one. I can hear your song. And he's like, nope, not up for this. And he uses whatever sort of energy he has to cast off Robert. It's not actually explained what it is. It's just kind of a energy blast vaguely from his body. We then cut over to Star Labs, where we have the one woman, the security, Dr. Sarah, is fighting off as many of them as she can. Dr. Stone and Dr. Morrow are back, and they're just like, hi, we locked down the containment fields around level 1. Like, the red room is secured. You cannot let it be compromised. And he's like, yeah, sure, doing what I can. And we see her taking shots at the Techno-Sapiens. We also get one shot of him of this, like, blonde woman who's a member of the Techno-Sapiens. They really focus on her for a panel. I don't know if she'll come up, but she's there. We then see back to Cyborg. A bunch of people are trapped in a bus. He's defending it from the Techno-Sapiens as they come through. And as it looks like they're about to be overrun, something else flies in, and they're like, oh no, it's more of them. And Cyborg says, no, those are the good guys. And in comes a Voltron-style plane made up of the Metal Men. And Dr. What's his name? Whoever's the one who does the Metal Men. So they all break apart. They form their own things and start fighting against the Techno-Sapiens. It's Will Magnus, that's his name. So now they're helping the fight. Back over at Star Labs, we see Sarah has reconvened with the rest of the doctors, and it's like, yeah, all right, let's do what we can. But as they make their way, trying to get into the room, they have to lower the containment field to get in. And as they lower the containment field, in launches a bunch of Techno-Sapiens that grab a bunch of them. So already they're on the back foot, and Dr. Morrow's like, oh God, we're losing. We're not going to make it. Cyborg talks with Will Magnus, and he's just like, hey, I got your distress signal. And Cyborg's like, yeah, I don't know what the Techno-Sapiens did. They blocked all normal communications, so I had to fire something out that only the Metal Men would hear. And Will's like, yes, I specifically built that with the idea that if everything was knocked out, the Metal Men could still come out to play. So kudos, glad you caught into that. And they talk about like, what are these things? Cyborg has no clue, but one of the people did recognize Robert, and it's just like, oh, well, maybe it has something to do with their cybernetics. Maybe it's a parasite. I don't know. Regardless, the metal men aren't affected, so it must also require some level of organic material as well. And Will's like, cool, where's the Justice League, man? And he's like, before the communications grid got knocked out, I got the call. Turns out that this is worldwide. Everyone's going to be busy, so us here in Detroit, we're on our own. And we got to get back to Star Labs because that's going to be the main facility, the only thing that can take out these guys. So at that point, Will gets it all broken down, just being like, all right, any hope of stopping these things is at Star Labs, and we're over here, way far away from that. And he's like, yep, absolutely. Cool, let's go. So at that point, we cut back over to the Star Labs crew, and they once again are on the back foot. However, a portal opens up, and out steps the Tech Breakers, the other faction. And they say, Sarah Charles, and, full Terminator fashion, just like, oh, don't shoot, don't shoot. And they're just like, no, we're cool. We're Tech Breakers, don't shoot us. And so Cyborg and them managed to clear a path. They managed to make their way over to Star Labs. However, Cyborg sees the Tech Breakers, who are the ones that technically killed him beforehand, and he's like, screw these guys. And he starts throwing punches, really going hard on them. Tech Breaker's like, Cyborg, cool it. We need you to understand this. Like, what's up? And he's like, no, get off me. And he starts like going crazy, starts like ripping apart pieces of them. And one of the Tech Breakers takes off their helmet and says, Sarah, look at me, you know who I am, even if you don't know me. And she's like, how could this be? So back out in the fight, Sarah comes out like, Cyborg, stop, you gotta stop it. And he's like, what? These are the people who killed me. Screw these guys. And it's like, no. I don't understand how any of this is possible, but you gotta check this out. And we see the Tech Breaker that took off the helmet is Sarah Charles from the future, saying, yes, it's me. I mean, maybe not the future, maybe it's an alternate timeline, but at the very least, different Sarah Charles, saying like, look, yeah, I know. We've seen better days. I got a mohawk going on, so it's clearly post-apocalypse. And Cyborg's like, all right, well, you better have a damn good reason for killing me beforehand. And he's just like, look, I can either do an apology, or you can help win this war that your father started. Oh my God. So all this is Silas's fault somehow, like most things are. It's a fine issue for what it is. Like, once we hit and then we're in the 24 hours ahead thing, it's fine. It feels like, okay, we call in the metal men, we clear out a path, we set up that this is some bigger thing, and the Tech Breakers, who we thought were villains, are actually on the side of the good guys. All that is fine. All that's a good issue. It's that 24-hour time skip. It's that idea of, and then the invasion started, let's skip ahead. Let's not show the first minutes of the invasion. Let's not show Cyborg reacting to that and how he would try to like save people in the short term. It's like, no, now already there's mass destruction and whatever. It's all worldwide. We don't need to cover any of that. It, honest to God, feels like Cyborg has been a book that's been, I think, was supposed to launch with the rest of the DCU titles, which are all on issue 5 at this point. This is now on issue 3. It kind of feels like they're making up for lost time. It kind of feels like this is something where they may have had an issue where they did have that whole thing, and they're like, okay, but we're supposed to be by issue 5 now. This is only issue 4's content. We just need to skip issue 3. So maybe that's what it is. I have nothing to back that up, but it just strikes me as that sort of vibe. But no, it's not a bad issue in its own right. It's just that weird skip ahead where it feels like we did have an entire issue we could have done something with there. So I'm going to say this is a 6.5. It's not bad. Again, it's okay. It's just weird how they structured this one compared to like any other conventional comic. Green Lantern number 45, written by Robert Venditti, art by Billy Tan. So last issue, I mean, was technically the annual, but like we got this whole thing of them trying to figure out what planets are, where this whole source wall thing is coming from, the fact of everything turning to rock. So we pick up with the now, where Darlene, the ship, is on this planet of like flowers. It's a beautiful looking ship. And we see Virgo is inside, and he is like, what is Hal up to right now? And then we see Hal is in a hand-to-hand fight, well, hand-to-construct fight with Black Hand, who is turning his constructs to stone. But we cut to earlier, and we see Hal's just staring down at a star map and he's looking at all this stuff. Virgo and Trapper are like, how long is he gonna keep just looking at that? Like, he's not saying anything. What's up? And then all of a sudden the ship is like, analysis complete. And he's like, cool, plot it out, let me see it. And they show there's a bunch of planets that they were analyzing for like space traffic, anything coming or going. And it's like, here's a bunch of planets that did not have anything leave, no radio signals, no nothing within the past couple of days, weeks, whatever else. They basically lie on a straight line. And he's like, okay, cool. This is the order that these planets are being taken over. And it's like, and here's the next planet that would be the logical place to end up next. So Virgo and Trapper are like, all right, what do we do? And he's like, well, computer zoom out, show it to me again. And he like takes the path and he's like, okay, that's the next planet he's going to. Where's the next planet? And he's like, ah, crap. Oh, God. Okay. Yeah, look, you guys, I need you, Virgo and Trapper. You're going to stay here. You're going to stay on the ship. The ship's going to keep you safe. Darlene, vacation time. You want to take some time off? Go for it. And Trapper's like, awesome. Yeah, let's hit up some brothels. And Hal's like, no, Darlene is in charge. Wherever Darlene wants to go, you guys are going to go. Her only order is not to follow me. Got it? And we see Virgo's just following Hal, trying to get a word in, but Hal's just like, yep, nope, Darlene, next 24 hours, do whatever you want. If I do not meet up with you at the rendezvous point at the 24-hour mark, assume I am dead, let these two go off and do whatever they want to do, and then you're free to do whatever else. And then Virgo finally catches up, just being like, Hal, what's up, man? Like, we talked in the previous issue about how you are some, like, fugitive, corrupt police officer, but, like, you keep on doing stuff to save people. That doesn't seem like an episode of The Shield, man. What are you doing? And he's just like, look, it wasn't supposed to go this way, okay? What was supposed to happen was that I was supposed to be the fugitive, the Green Lantern Corps was supposed to be chasing me, and they were going to get their reputation back because they're, chasing the bad guy who was the one responsible for all the stuff that happened recently. But then the Corps disappeared, and, like, now I don't know what to do, and, like, there's a power vacuum. What the hell's Sinestro doing? It's a whole thing. I just want something to work out here. And Virgo's basically like, what's happening, man? Like, why are you alone? He's like, look, I will tell you everything if I make it through this one last thing. If I can make it through this one day, I will tell you everything that's going on. So we cut down to that last planet, the one that they said was going to be next on the list. And we see it's already turned to stone, and sitting there is Black Hand, just like, they're all rocks. None of them are corpses. I give up. This sucks. I'm never going to be able to. What happened to me? What's going on? And then we see Hal in silhouette. We can't make out his face at this point. Is hovering behind Black Mass, saying like, "Hello, I think I know what your problem is, and I would like to try to fix it." And Black Hand's like, "You can turn me back to normal." He's like, "I mean, normal for you. I don't think anything can make you normal." And he's like, "Oh man, that'd be great. Everything I touch turns to rocks. I stepped onto this planet. I poked one measly corpse, and then all this happened. Man, if someone told me I was going to be Space Medusa, I would have said great. But now, no, not at all." So he's like, "Yeah, cool. Anyway, I can help you, but you have to follow me and stop touching things." And he's like, "Okay. Well, I was on my way back home to Coast City. Where do you want to take me?" He's like, "I want to take you to the Source Wall. Whatever you got going on here is Source Wally, so we gotta go check that out." And he's like, "Oh, well, Mom always told me not to go with strangers, so who are you? Show me your face." And Hal's just like, "I'm just a friend, don't worry about it." He's like, no, I don't have any friends. Who are you?" And Hal's like, "Hi, it's me, your boy." And Black Mass is like, "Oh, Hal, oh, no, I'm not having this." And so he throws one of the dead stone bodies at Hal. Hal blocks it with a construct, and he's like, "Look, it doesn't have to go this way." However, then his construct starts turning to stone, and he's like, "What?" And he disables it, like it drops to the ground, and he's like, "Oh, I thought it was like matter, but it's all things can be turned. That's not good." So immediately Black Hand just starts taking off pebbles off the wall, just tiny little rocks, starts throwing it at Hal. And he's like, oh, don't you see? I'm broken beyond repair. There's nothing you can do to save me. But at the very least, I can look at your last breath. And he starts throwing the rocks at Hal. Hal makes a bunch of constructs of like arrows, things that are not connected to him via a little wire, and starts throwing them at the rocks to stop it. And all the while, this is intercut with Darlene, the ship, on a planet full of these beautiful flowers, just saying like, Hal mentioned to stop and smell the roses. I don't get it. Does it have to be roses? Is this the wrong kind of flower? Why did he tell me to come to a planet like this? This is dumb. I'm bored. So that's just happening in the background. But all the while, Black Hand, he's just coming up to Hal with his finger extended like, hey, buddy, I'ma touch ya. That all it takes is just one touch. And he keeps on making constructs to like hold it off, but he is only able to hold the construct for just a second before the stone stuff starts taking hold. So like he turns into a grizzly bear construct and then has to cast off the grizzly bears. It starts turning into a statue of a grizzly bear. And all the while, Black Hand's just throwing rocks at him, just trying to be like, "Come here, man! Look, when I was a kid, I used to trap bugs in sap and then pull off all their legs, and they never escaped the murder I dreamed. And you're just a bug to me. I don't want you annoying me anymore." And he's getting right up to Hal's face, and he's got like two fingers right next to his eyes. And then all of a sudden, Hal makes a construct of like a giant fist, punches him up into a wall, makes a wrecking ball construct, hits him once with it, waits for it to turn to stone, and hits him again even harder. So at that point, Black Hand is finally knocked out. Darlene is trying to be, he's like, hey, Virgo, Trapper, you guys have any thoughts? And they're just both asleep in the place. And it's Black Hand is just out for the count, and Hal comes up saying, you're a monster. It's time I buried you for good. He's like, I can't save the previous planets, but I'm going to make sure you can't make this happen anywhere else. So yeah, that's the issue. Next issue's cover has Relic on it, so I guess we're getting back to that. No, it's a fine issue. I think the fight scene is very creatively well done, because the idea that you think going into it, oh, he can just make constructs, keep his distance, totally safe. But the fact that the constructs themselves aren't safe gives this sort of game of tag aspect to it, where all Black Hand has to do is touch him directly and you're done. So it's very creatively well done. And then I like the breaking it up of the ship, just being like, why am I on this planet? People said I should do this. This sucks. I'm bored. That's just fun. I enjoy the writing on that. So yeah, no, I really like this issue. I think I'm going to give this one I'll say an 8. I think it's definitely earned that, at least for me. So we'll see. I think we've only got one more issue left in this trade. That's not to say that the arc itself wraps up, but we'll see if we wrap up the Black Hand stuff. So yeah, definitely enjoying it and definitely worth checking out. Green Arrow Annual Number 1, written by Benjamin Percy, art by Szymon Kudranski. So right now, in the Green Arrow book, we're around issue 45. We're in the middle of an arc. We just actually started an arc involving like a wolf dog sort of thing. This is the first part of a completely separate arc. And for what I understand, it is the next arc that we won't be getting until issue like 48 or something like that. So it's set around Halloween time, which is the only reason I think it's set in this month, being October. So we got opening up with a group of what appear to be Mormons. They're not. They're evil, but they might still be Mormons. They're all wearing white shirts and black ties, and they put on presidential masks. And apparently they are known as the Patriots. And by day, they are respectable members of society, but by night, they show their true inner selves as rotten to the core. And they have a piece of paper that shows infected people in the Seattle area, and they hop in a white van, and they go into this area where this man lives and say, all right, hit as many addresses as you can, meet back at the van in 5 minutes. And they start spray painting beware of dog on the walls. They throw like jack-o'-lanterns. They like put dynamite into fuel or tailpipes of cars, set fire to stuff. Like it's all just total mayhem until finally they reach this one man's house, and he's just watching Wheel of Fortune. And they break in and they threaten him with baseball bats. And he's like, no, please, no. And they say, oh, heal, mutt, heal. We then cut over to Oliver's Queen's apartment. He's just got done having some fun time with one of his lady friends, and he said she's already putting on her clothes, getting ready to go, and he's like, what? No, stay the night. I'll make you waffles in the morning. Everything will be cool. And she's like, look, let's not pretend this is going to go anywhere. You're white, you're rich, you're male, and you've got a huge, and he goes, apartment? And she's like, yeah, look, you're not relatable. I can't see this going anywhere. You're just too much of a completely outside my sphere. And we pick up and we show police have arrived the next morning at that place that's been vandalized, and Oliver recounts how 6 months ago a wolf attacked a rancher. It wasn't rabid, however it did have a disease called the Leucos disease, and the infected, which were called wargs, they were medicated, they were put into an isolating protection program, basically their own little camp in a separate area of things. But the media found out, apparently the names of the infected people got leaked, the hospital leaked the names, and so it resulted in all these people being outed. And we see the police are talking to this guy and just like, oh yeah, well, we don't know how they found you, Mr. Everson. Just like, yeah, they leaked our names. Like, whoa, what am I supposed to, we're kept out here for their safety, but what about our safety? What about that? And he's like, just keep taking your medicine and we'll do what we can do. Do you mind if I ask how you got infected? He's like, yeah, I slept with the wrong person. And he's just like, well, then I guess you were asking for it. And it's like, okay, we're doing an AIDS parallel. That's what we're doing here. So be it. And the police officer gets back in the car just being like, I feel I need to wear hazmat suits around these freaks. So we go to Oliver's HQ. He's talking to Henry, and basically they're looking into the Leucos thing, trying to figure out what's going on. The only lead they have is that it was a white van and that it is some sort of hate crime, obviously. And Oliver's like, what can you tell me about this Leucos thing? And he's like, what am I, Wikipedia? He's like, yes, you absolutely are. I poke you and you give me information. He's like, fair enough. So apparently the Leucos disease started somewhere back in the 7th century, somewhere around Scandinavia. No one knows exactly how it started, but it was a wolf that had some sort of wasting disease. And then during some sort of solstice ritual thing, some Scandinavian Viking types ate the heart of this wolf to give them its powers, and it ended up being a werewolf disease. They started turning very wolf-like, and they started getting more and more bloodlust and anger and such like that. Back in the day, they were known as berserkers, but it has such turned into the commonly, as this comic says, wargs. So at that point, the disease propagated itself, hundreds, thousands, millions, and the longer you have the disease, of which there is no cure, ostensibly, you get more and more wolf-like. And then normal society started fighting back. We saw that the Crusades, they were slaughtered, the Puritans, they were slaughtered, and then, wouldn't you know it, the Nazis. Seems like the Nazis took care of everything in the end. Except, turns out they didn't. And a few months ago, some more cases started breaking out. The U.S. government started putting them away, putting them in camps, and that's where we're at now. However, there are some out there who have the disease that have not gone quietly into that good night. And we see a bunch of bikers have essentially taken over a little village of their own, a little town, and they've become this roving band of Leucos infected. And the bikers arrive at the home of the man who was attacked before, and they're just like, hey, government tells you should be ashamed of who you are, that you need to hide away, that you shove your face in your own filth and yank your collar. They tell you you're disgusting. You believe that? And he's like, well, who are you guys? And it's like, oh, I'm the big bad wolf, a.k.a. Dolph Merrick. And I'm the header of this Berserkers Bike Club. You want in? Let's take back your city. So Oliver walks out of his bedroom. He sees Emiko is wearing a paper bag over her head and says, oh, I was thinking about how peaches and fruits and whatnot age faster than us. So I thought maybe if I stick my head in a bag like they are, I'd age faster and I wouldn't have to go back to stupid school again. And she talks about it, apparently, with the names of the infected people leaked out. One of them is the sibling of this girl that goes to her school. Two guys are just relentless, saying like, oh, how do we know you're not infected? Maybe you're patient zero for all we know. And then Emiko hears all this, picks up a physics textbook, and just lobs it at a guy's head. And he's like, oh, I wouldn't hit a girl even if you're asking for it. And she's like, oh, do it anyway. And then she immediately launches into a kung fu attack, knocking the guys out, and goes over, talks to the girl who's being made fun of. She thanks her, and, does the right thing. But she's like, yeah, so you might get a call from like the principal or some lawyers or stuff like that. And Oliver, he's like, okay, do any of those guys drive a white van? Do you know? And it's like, no, they don't drive. They're sophomores. Why? What do you don't care that like you're going to get a call or whatever? And he's just like, no, geez, I'm your brother. I'm not going to try to pretend to be your dad. However, he looks out the window and he sees it's Halloween. It's Seattle, and there's a thing called the Midnight Parade, which is just the Thanksgiving Day parade, but spooky and at night. And we see there's a whole bunch of floats being set up and all this other stuff going on. And Oliver's like, I got an idea. And she's like, immediately, Emiko lashes out, just being like, what? Is it for me to make friends? Because like it's hard for me to make friends. I don't know why you keep saying that to me. And he's like, what? No. I'm just saying, let's go out and let's pretend to be who we are usually. Let's be something else. And we then cut over to the hideout, aka the place that the bikers have taken over, which apparently belonged to a puppet maker named Tommy Maltman, and he made these giant like wooden puppets, and they're horrific looking. But then the wolf people killed him and strung him up from the roofs. I don't know if there's a deeper meaning to this, but regardless, the main guy, Merrick, steps up and is just like, oh, people talk about Lukos as if we're lesser, but we're the next stage of evolution. I am man and I am wolf. Who else is with me? And, you know, they all charge for it. And they're like, yeah, we're proud of who we are. Let's be dangerous. Let's go out. So we go out to the midnight parade, and they're dressed, obviously, in their green arrow and red arrow looks. And as they're going through, one guy's dressed up as Robin Hood, and he comes up. He's like, I love your costume, man. He's like, thanks. So the midnight parade's going on. Emiko and Oliver get some food. George ends up stealing it, and she's like, haha, you can have some of mine. And as the parade starts coming through, we see everyone's dressed all spooky as skeletons. It's a whole big thing. It's literally the size of the Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade. But we keep on cutting in between the parade and shots of these puppets, which again, the puppets are not part of the story. I don't know why they're here, but regardless, as we're going through, we see that some of the people who are dressed up here are American crew, and it looks like they've used the puppet heads as a disguise to some extent, but like it's really just them holding up sticks and then hiding under some fabric. And then Merrick's like, all right, be ready, let's go. George starts growling. He's upset about it. We see that some of the papers being thrown out by one of the floats says Warg with like a cross through it, like an X through it. And Oliver notices it's a white van, and he's like, those are the guys. They're the ones who committed the hate crime. All right, well, got to get on them. But before he can do anything, before he's able to step up or do anything, all of a sudden, I'm going to call them the werewolves because they're I guess the wargs to make more sense. They come out, and he's like, all right, everybody, nobody kill, bite everybody, spread the infection. And so the wargs go out and they start biting everybody that they can, including this young little girl. She's dressed up in a princess outfit. She gets bit. Other people get slashed with claws because, again, some of the bigger ones have wolf-like things. And Oliver, he wasn't at the forefront of this, so he comes in, he's like, what's happening here? And the Robin Hood guy's like, it's a terrorist attack. We got to everyone run. So immediately the anti-Warg people, the Patriots, they come out. They're like, oh, this is it. This is our time. We're going to step up. We're going to do this. They pull out guns. They start shooting at the Wargs. Oliver's and Emiko were like, who are the bad guys here? And Oliver's like, anybody who's not running. Those are the people we focus on. So we see the young girl is like, oh, I got bit. And Patriot comes up, tells the father, like, this isn't your daughter anymore. I'm going to take her out of her misery. And Emiko shoots an arrow through his hand and be like, no, you will not. We see the Patriots start firing they're about to start firing into the crowd. Oliver sends some arrows into the float above them, causes it to crash down on them. They lose their guns. We see one of the wolf guys is about to attack a little old lady in a wheelchair, to which George comes up and takes him out. And then we go back to Merrick, which I keep on saying Merrick, but I actually really do forget whether his name is actually Merrick. Yeah, it is Merrick. All right, Merrick or Marek. So we see that he's got a couple people by the throat. He's holding them up above the ground, and he's, I guess, infecting them or threatening to infect them. But regardless, Oliver uses one of the acrobats in this parade, uses his like gear to like do like a cool flip and shoot an arrow into Merrick's bicep, takes him down. Or rather, causes him to drop the people, because he then comes in with a kick and a punch to the face, and he manages to get a smack off on Merrick. We do see there's blood leaking from Merrick's teeth. However, earlier on, they said that when he gets excited, when people who are infected with the Leucos disease get excited, blood does just leak from their mouth. So not implicitly meaning anything. But we see one of the Patriots fires off a shotgun at Merrick because he's about to attack Oliver and ends up blowing off some of his fingers. Oliver is like, hey, look, don't shoot him. We need to detain him. This man needs to be detained. And he's like, oh, he's not a man. To which Emiko then fires off some electric arrows and is like, all right, took him out, no problem. So both the Patriots and the Wargs are now both out. They're taken care of. And Oliver and Emiko are like, okay, it's over. We did it. And Oliver looks down at his arm, and we see that he's bit. And he says, no, it's not. Tune into issue 48 for the end of that. It's I am so surprised that this is here. I get that it's October, and I get that this is a Halloween-based issue. Like, from an editorial perspective, it makes sense that you don't want to put this out in, like, February, when 48 would actually be taking place. But at the same time, like, it feels weird to have this here. It feels weird to say, like, oh, and tune in 3 months' time when we finally get around to that. So, yeah, it's not a bad issue. I do like Kudranski's art. I've had that ever since Penguin Pride and Prejudice. That was a great, or Pain and Prejudice, not Pride and Prejudice. It's always been very well done. So, no, it's very well done. I like the issue overall. It's just so weird that it's placed here while other things are going on, while we're in the middle of a completely separate arc that has nothing to do with this. So I'm going to say this is a 7.5. It's solid, it's good, but like to put it in an 8 I'd have to ignore what all is going on in Green Arrow, and this just seems like an editorial oversight. So 7.5. Lobo, number 11, written by Cullen, Bunn, and Frank Barbiere, art by Robson, Rocha. So last issue had a bunch of Lobo talking to Sinestro, because obviously this is all intertwined with that. However, we then had Lobo going after the Red Lanterns, and he ended up killing Rancor, the human Red Lantern. And then we saw that Atrocitus was back, and Bleeze was with him, and there was this new thing called the Rage Mother, which was making their rings and all that stuff. So this issue picks up in orbit above Yzma. There's a satellite or some ship or something like that. It might honestly be Lobos, if I'm being honest, but we see that they have attacked a whole bunch of people in here, the Red Lanterns, and have used their blood in some sort of ritual to make more Red Lantern rings. And Atrocitus is just calling out the new recruits, basically saying, like, you guys know true rage. You've suffered incredible loss. You've been punished for crimes for your innocence. You've had to go through all this stuff. You've been lost to your rage. Be free. You will be able to use your rage. It will fuel you, blah, blah, blah. And they all get given rings. And this is the only bit that we get about the Rage Mother, is that the Rage Mother apparently brought them together because she was a victim of the Yellow Lanterns, and now she is a harbinger of suffering, a servant to the Great Anger. And that's it. I don't know what she is. She's just essentially, apparently, according to Lobo, she's got the battery on her back. So she's kind of just holding up the whole Corps right now. But regardless, all the new recruits get their rings, and Lobo, who's watching on via some like infrared or something like that, is like, okay, yeah, it's a lot of them. I might run into a little bit of trouble here. Also, Atrocitus, just on his own, is a problem. So all of them get inducted to the Corps. They say the mantra, blah, blah, blah. And as Atrocitus is like, all right, everybody, you ready? You good? And everyone's like, yeah, we're all super angry. A bunch of little metal balls start coming into the room, just like marble-sized. And Atrocitus is like, what the hell is this? And then they realize, oh, someone's attacking us. Red Lanterns, defend your home. And then all of a sudden, they explode into a laser grid, which just like zaps half of the Red Lanterns in half immediately. So Atrocitus is immediately like, oh, this is the Hunter, this is Lobo, the one you warned us about last issue. Come on, guys, let's go, everybody. Let's get retribution. Let us get revenge. So they're running down a hallway looking for Lobo. Dexstar, the kitty, smells something, and Atrocitus is like, yes, he will find this Hunter. And Lobo's watching the side, being like, oh, you should have watched your step. And then all of a sudden, Dexstar just gets straight up cut in half. Like Lobo, I guess, was hiding underneath a panel or something, and he just straight up stabs Dexter straight through the middle of the stomach, so he's straight up dead. And Lobo, he comes up with this just horrible grin, being like, looks like you're gonna need a new mascot, huh? So Atrocitus is super pissed. They just killed his cat, and just like, all right, blood for blood, everyone eviscerate this guy. And Lobo, he's got this crazy ass smile on his face this whole time. He's super pumped. He's like, all right, these guys are hardcore, let's do it. So he's ready to fight, but then they start firing off Red Lantern energy. He's put on the back foot. They start shooting. It doesn't seem like it's doing much. And Atrocitus immediately comes in being like, I get the killing blow. I'm the one in charge. And Atrocitus is like napalm blood starts dripping out of his mouth onto Lobo's face. And he's calling out Lobo being like, I can feel the rage in your hearts. Can you endure the wrath of the Red Lanterns? And Lobo's like, oh God, his napalm blood stuff is actually burning me faster than I can heal. I got to get some space between us. So he grapples up, grabs one of the floating Red Lanterns, pulls him down, shoves a bomb in his mouth, and then pushes him into the middle of the crowd, causing him to explode and get a little bit of a distraction. So Lobo hides, the rest of the group all run off trying to find him, and as Lobo peers around a corner, he comes across a room full of what seem to be ancient weapons. Like, they all look like they're made out of stone, and he's like, all right, that's perfect. I can set a trap with this, because they're so blind with anger, they won't think to stop and look for a trap. So immediately Atrocitus is just zooming on the halls, and he's like, oh, he must be close. And then one of them sets off the trap and ends up killing like 2 more Red Lanterns. So Lobo's like, yep, all right, well, that gives me a few more minutes. And then he stops, he goes to heal. He thinks about being on Zarnia and his previous acts and all that stuff. He's like, yeah, of course I'm full of rage, but the difference between me and the Red Lanterns is I can control it and I can use it and make it a weapon. They're consumed by it. So Lobo's healed up, and he's like, all right, let's take care of this, take him out. We come up against this one blonde lady-looking one who's separated from the rest of the group, and he's like, hey, lady, catch. And he throws 2 knives into her shoulders and then blows her head off, just being like, all right, that's one, don't get the blood on me. And I almost feel bad because these are new recruits. Like, they didn't know what they were getting into. But then Atrocitus pops through the floor, and he's like, oh, crap, all right, this is a problem. Atrocitus is on me again. So he tries firing off some shots. Atrocitus just makes some energy constructs, manages to block him off, and manages to bite into Lobo's arm, where he's like, oh God, it burns. There's a lot to this. So he punches Atrocitus in the face, tells him, like, all right, I'm going to calm you down. Now, Sinestro told me one thing about the Red Lantern Corps to help me kill them, and that is that their power is directly related to their heart. There's some sort of link going on there. So I got to go for the heart. And he stabs into Atrocitus' heart, and he goes, oh, my rage, it's my power, it's undying. And Lobo's like, all right, well, here's a tip for the next life, get some tougher skin. And he unloads a full clip into Atrocitus' face, and he's done. Atrocitus has been killed. And he's like, all right, cool, did it. Now I have to go destroy the power battery. That's the big thing Sinestro wanted me to do. But as he turns the corner back to where the Rage Mother was, she's no longer there. Neither is Bleeze, as we see. And just like, all right, well, I took out the main guy and I put a few Red Lanterns in the ground. That's got to count for something. And we see Bleeze is with the Rage Mother out in some asteroids field, and she's just vomiting up like piles and piles of blood. And as Bleeze is watching this happen, all of a sudden a hand emerges from the puddle, and out comes all of the Red Lanterns that died. Dexter, Atrocitus, all the new recruits, they come out and they say, yes, we are reborn. We are beings of pure rage now. Ha 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 ha. So all of them are back, except for Rancor. Rancor actually died. I don't want to make it clear here. That guy died just a little bit too early. He didn't make the cutoff. So sorry. He's dead permanently. So yeah, no, I mean, it's weird because Red Lanterns was one of the few things in the New 52 that got some real fleshing out. Like, they had the interpolitical stories, they had all this extra stuff going on, and like you got a feeling for the Red Lanterns. And this doesn't jive with any of it. This doesn't make any sense from where we left off. Just like Convergence is what cut off the Red Lantern series. When we moved over to DC YOU, like, we went up to Red Lanterns issue 40. Now, mind you, at that point, it was more of a Guy Gardner book and not really focusing on the rest of the Corps. But even when we left the Corps, Bleeze was never going to be with Atrocitus again. Atrocitus viewed her as like a complete traitor. And we're just kind of ignoring that. we're just kind of saying like, well, never mind. That's not to say I don't think there can be an explanation. I think they left themselves open to like, there could be, but it's not present in these two issues. It's absolutely just its own thing. So yeah, maybe we'll get some more out of this. I feel like we're kind of done with the Red Lanterns, though. I feel like this thing here is either setting up something for the Sinestro book, or it's setting up something for Red Lanterns, like post New 52. So I don't know. We'll see what we get. But as it stands, this issue is good in its own right, but confusing in the larger narrative of the universe. So I'm going to say this one is a 6.5. I think it's just below that good value right now. It's okay, but it has its upper qualities. And that's it. That is all the comics that were put out by DC Comics this October 7th, 2015. And wouldn't you know it, next week we got another new number 1. So I'll go ahead and just list off those books real quick for anybody who just wants the in and out here. Next week we have, in alphabetical order, Batmite, Batman/Superman, Batman and Robin Eternal, Catwoman, Constantine the Hellblazer, Earth 2 Society, Harley Quinn, Justice League of America, Justice League United, Red Hood and Arsenal, and Starfire, with the new number 1 being Superman, Lois and Clark. For anyone who is unfamiliar what that book is, during Convergence, I hate that I have to keep on saying that, we had the post-crisis, pre-Flashpoint, Superman, Lois, and their baby John Kent go back into Crisis on Infinite Earths. And the implication is they just died there, or they disappeared, or the timeline shifted, or whatever. Like, they didn't actually need to go anywhere. But here they are. They are now in the main universe, and they are now doing stuff. And they retcon the whole timeline to adjust to the fact that they've been here for a while. So this is honestly, going into Rebirth, one of the biggest things that happens. I don't know if this series matters, but in terms of like moving out of New 52, this is one of the biggest transition points that we've hit here. So if you have any interest in that, go ahead and check it out. As for the other stuff that came out this month, I don't think there's anything, or this week, I don't think there's anything else that's a really huge deal. Obviously, the Justice League of America book has been a big event one happening, but no, nothing else is really jumping out of me. So yeah, all that's going on. And if you have any comments on any of the books I've talked about this week, last week, any week at all, go ahead and add them into the comment section down beneath this YouTube video. Or if you're listening to the audio version, once again, I'm pretty sure I'm like 2 months behind on audio uploads. Please check out the YouTube version. You will be much more up to date. But if you're not going to, we have a subreddit, a Discord, a Patreon. All of those are things I, to some extent, check out. So be sure to go onto one of those and leave your comments about how I am doing everything on this show wrong. You know, it's actually been a long time since I got one of those. I knock on wood like crazy, but at the same time, I feel like it's been at least until like episode 150 or something since somebody said like, you should show the comics on screen. And I'm like, yes, I want to put in 7 extra hours into producing this in order to have the relevant stuff pop up on screen, just to then risk YouTube saying copyright infringement and taking the whole thing down. That's what I want to do with my time. I like how I'm getting angry at someone that I literally just said does not exist, but regardless, screw you, it's my show. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Always make sure to, I just completely forgot the ending, so I'm just going to skip ahead to the end bit here. Tune in next week, blah, blah, blah. Always try to remember, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.